This is incredible.
Greetings, fellow travelers. This is Rick and Jess Adventures. If you've been accompanying us on our journey so far, welcome back. Thank you for your support and your enthusiasm for our journeys. Your views, comments, and definitely your subscriptions mean the absolute world to us.
In this episode, we delve into our unforgettable experiences in Israel, a captivating destination brimming with rich history and cultural significance. However, our journey doesn't stop there. It's just a slice of the exhilarating adventure, which also includes explorations in Jordan, Egypt, and Greece. To stay connected, please subscribe to our channel to get updates on those future episodes.
Now, back to Israel. We are going to cover a lot of ground. With that being said, the description of this video will have timestamps tied to each location. If there are particular locations you'd like more information on, these timestamps will be quite handy.
Now, let's provide a brief overview of the sites that will be covered in this episode. The first sites we visited were the Stella Monastery on Mount Carmel, the Baha'i Gardens in Haifa, as well as the Caesarea National Park. Later on, we travel to Galilee, where we visit these sites. After Galilee, we head south to the Dead Sea, where we go to Masada National Park, and then we headed back towards Jerusalem with a stop at Herodium Park. We also visited these sites in Jerusalem. In addition, we took 2 guided tours, one to sites in the West Bank. The other was a dual narrative tour through the city of Hebron.
Before we dive into our visit to Israel, let's briefly discuss a few items that we researched before we traveled there.
First, we checked the U.S. State Department for entry requirements and travel advisories. For entry requirements, until January 1st, 2025, U.S. citizens are not required to have a visa for stays of 90 days or less. In addition, your departure date must not exceed the validity of your passport. However, starting on January 1st, 2025, U.S. citizens must have an approved electronic travel authorization or a visa to enter Israel for tourism purposes. This application will cost 25 shekels or close to $7 US.
Currently, the U.S. State Department has a Level 3 travel advisory that advises tourists to reconsider travel due to the risk of safety and security.
For reference, our experiences and footage from this episode took place towards the end of December 2022 and into early January 2023.
Another important travel step is to ensure that you have the right travel adapters. In Israel, the most used outlet is Type H, which is also compatible to Type C. In case you are wondering, most universal travel adapters will include a Type C travel adapter.
An extra travel planning aspect in Israel is that it's crucial to stay informed about changing operating hours, which often vary based on religious dates. Many businesses, tourist sites, and public services adjust their schedules for Jewish holidays like Shabbat, which is Friday evening to Saturday evening, as well as other religious observances. To avoid inconvenience, always double-check the operating hours of your destinations in advance.
Additionally, remember that certain sites, especially religious ones, have dress codes. Modest clothing is required, including long sleeves, long pants, or skirts, and covered shoulders for both men and women. At Jewish religious sites, men should cover their heads, often with a kippah, as indicated by posted signs. Women may consider carrying a scarf or shawl for unexpected visits to these places.
It's important to be respectful of diverse religious practices you'll encounter. Understanding and honoring these customs not only enhances your experience, but also shows appreciation for the rich cultural heritage of Israel.
When discussing religion and history, I must note that I am not an expert. With that being said, the information presented in this video comes from a variety of sources, including Wikipedia, the Israel Nature and Parks Authority, seetheholyland.net, hired tour guides, and our personal studies. We will include links to these referred sources of information in the description of this video. While I strive for accuracy, being human, some inaccuracies may inadvertently remain.
On a final note, let me preface this episode by saying our travel style isn't for everyone. Our itineraries are usually jam-packed as we try to make the most of every day. Fueled by travel adrenaline, we tend to hit the ground running. For instance, our flight landed in Tel Aviv at 4 a.m., and after picking up our rental car, we immediately began touring sites around Israel.
When renting a car in Israel, there's an additional security step before starting the vehicle. Unlike in other countries where you simply turn the key, here you must enter a 4-digit code to unlock the ignition. Amusingly, we discovered that either the rental car company staff or a previous renter had conveniently written the code on the driver's side sun visor. So much for that added security.
Additionally, we always take a moment to document the condition of our rental car before driving off as a precaution.
With that out of the way, let's move forward and provide information about the particular sites that we visited on our travels around Israel.
Our first stop on our itinerary was the Stella Monastery, which is about an hour and 20-minute drive from Ben Gurion Airport.
The Stella Monastery is a Catholic monastery for discalced Carmelite monks. This religious order considers the spiritual fathers of the order to be Elijah, a prophet of the Old Testament, and Elijah, his disciple. Tradition indicates that Elijah and his disciple prayed and taught in the caves on Mount Carmel, which is the origin of the Carmelite name. The main church of the Stella Maris Monastery is said to contain a grotto believed to be previously inhabited by the prophet.
On the other side of the monastery, there is a path down the mountain towards the Mediterranean that leads to another cave. It is said that the prophet meditated there before his encounter with the priests of Baal, which was recorded in the first book of Kings. It is also believed to be the location where he studied and taught others.
The first book of Kings describes 450 prophets of Baal being summoned to Mount Carmel to respond to a challenge by Elijah, where they were asked to call on fire from their deity, Baal, to light a sacrifice. When their deity failed to respond to their pleas, Elijah rebuilt the altar for a sacrifice to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel. After being asked to let it be known that he is the God in Israel, fire came down and engulfed the offering.
At the time of our visit in December of 2022, the Stella Maris Monastery and the Cave of Elijah were under construction. However, we were still able to go inside the church of the monastery and see the grotto. On a final note, the name of the monastery is Latin for Star of the Sea, which refers to an early title for Mary, the mother of Jesus.
Our next site was a photo opportunity at the Baha'i Gardens, which was about a 6-minute drive from the monastery.
There are 3 entrance points. The main entrance is open Tuesday to Sunday. The Shrine of Baba and the inner gardens are open from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., and the outer shrine gardens are open from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. The balcony is open Sunday to Saturday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., and they are closed on Baha'i Holy Days and Yom Kippur. The third entrance of the German Colony Plaza viewpoint is temporarily closed. Times are subject to change, so always recheck operating times prior to planning a visit.
The Baha'i Gardens and the Shrine of Bab, also located on Mount Carmel in Haifa, is considered one of the holiest places on earth for the Baha'i faith. It consists of 19 terraces leading up the northern slope of Mount Carmel, with a radiant golden dome shrine at its summit. It is said that the terraces represent the Bab and his first 18 disciples. The Bab, the founder of the faith, is buried within the shrine. The shrine and the meticulously landscaped gardens harmoniously integrate symbols meaningful to the Baha'i faith. For those eager to delve deeper into the spiritual and architectural marvels of the site, complimentary tours of the upper terraces lasting approximately 50 minutes are available from Tuesdays to Sundays. Interested individuals can secure their spots through online reservations.
Here are some important notes about visiting and going on a free tour of the gardens.
Please wear clothing that covers your shoulders and reaches your knees with no tears. Because of the pebbled paths and occasionally slippery pavements, they recommend wearing comfortable shoes with good traction. During the summer months, consider bringing a hat and sunscreen.
Visitors are welcome to bring their own bottle of water, but drinking other beverages, eating, chewing gum, and smoking are not allowed inside the gardens.
For the safety of other visitors, the use of a stroller is not possible on tours due to the steep slope.
Finally, restrooms are not available during the tour of the gardens.
The subsequent destination was Caesarea National Park, which was about 36 minutes away from the Baha'i Gardens.
On holidays and Saturdays, it is recommended to arrive early as entry is on the basis of available space. Times are subject to change, so always recheck operating times prior to planning a visit.
Caesarea, a site with a rich history, has seen various civilizations leave their mark. Initially a Phoenician settlement and later a Jewish village, it thrived under the rule of Herod the Great during the Roman Republic. Herod's ambitious construction projects transformed the city, leading to its renaming in honor of Augustus Caesar, the first Roman emperor. Hence the name Caesarea. The city eventually became the capital of Roman Judea.
In 1961, a significant archaeological discovery known as the Pilate Stone was unearthed at the site. This artifact mentions Pontius Pilate, the Roman prefect infamous for presiding over Jesus' trial and crucifixion. Historians speculate that Pilate may have resided in Caesarea, utilizing the palace compound constructed by Herod as his headquarters.
Biblically, Caesarea holds importance in the spread of Christianity. Philip the Deacon introduced Christianity to the city, hosting Paul the Apostle in his home. It was in Caesarea where Peter the Apostle baptized Cornelius, the Roman centurion, and his household, marking the first instance of a Christian baptism for Gentiles. When Paul faced danger in Jerusalem, he found refuge in Caesarea, where he spent time with Philip the Deacon. Later, Paul was imprisoned in Caesarea for 2 years before being sent to Rome. These events underscore Caesarea's significance in early Christian history.
Visitors to the site today are greeted with a remarkable array of historical wonders, each offering a peek into the storied past of Caesarea. Among these treasures are the restored Roman theater, capable of accommodating up to 4,000 spectators and still serving as a stage for live performances.
Next, the Reef Palace, with its majestic remnants partially submerged in the sea, stands as a testament to the former opulence of ancient times.
The Crusader Gate, a formidable entrance into Caesarea, forms part of the sturdy fortifications of the city.
Nearby, the ancient port, commissioned by Herod himself, stands as the Middle East's first quay-based trading hub, which is steeped in centuries of maritime history.
A reconstructed fountain from the early Roman era offers a glimpse into the architectural splendor of antiquity. Meanwhile, the Hippodrome, a grand stadium designed for exhilarating horse and chariot races, once hosted crowds of up to 13,000 spectators, still echoes with the excitement of ancient competitions.
For a deeper immersion into the site's rich history, the Caesarea Harbor Visitor Center beckons with its immersive media displays, historical narratives, archaeological treasures, and captivating visual portrayal of King Herod's legacy.
Finally, just a brief 5-minute drive away lies the remains of a Roman aqueduct, a marvel of engineering that once conveyed water from the foothills of Mount Carmel to the city.
Following this location, we headed north towards the Sea of Galilee, where we visited the Church of Transfiguration on Mount Tabor.
Mount Tabor is considered the site of the Transfiguration of Jesus according to Christian tradition. However, scholars debate this identification, as the Gospel accounts do not specify the location, merely describing it as a high mountain in Galilee.
In the early centuries of Christianity, tradition identified Mount Tabor as the site of the Transfiguration. This identification was supported by early writings and accepted by the Syriac and Byzantine churches. Despite this, many modern biblical scholars question this tradition, pointing out that Mount Tabor's location does not align well with the surrounding events of the Transfiguration. At the time of the Transfiguration, a Hasmonean fortress occupied the summit, and Mount Tabor, at 420 meters above the plain, may not have been considered a high mountain compared to others in the region, such as the much higher Mount Hermon.
Despite these doubts, Mount Tabor has been a significant religious site since the 4th century, with various churches and a monastery built on its summit.
The Transfiguration is a biblical event where Jesus took Peter, James, and John up a mountain where they witnessed Moses and Elijah appearing and Jesus being transfigured, becoming radiant.
The Old Testament describes Mount Tabor as a sacred mountain, and it has held a strategic position at the junction of trade routes, witnessing many battles at its base.
After the Crusaders were defeated in the 12th century and the area came under Turkish control, all religious buildings on Mount Tabor were destroyed in 1263. The site remained abandoned for nearly 400 years until the Franciscans successfully negotiated permission to resettle there.
Historically, pilgrims climb 4,300 steps carved into the rocky slope to reach the summit. By comparison, today vehicles navigate a series of hairpin turns to reach the top.
The prominent Catholic church at the Transfiguration, designed by Italian architect Antonio Barluzzi, stands among the ruins of a Benedictine monastery. Its entrance, flanked by the chapels dedicated to Moses and Elijah, who appeared with Jesus during the Transfiguration. Just like the event of the Transfiguration, where Peter asked if he should make 3 tents, the facade of the church looks like 3 tents. The event is depicted above the main altar in the central apse. In the crypt beneath the church are the altar and fragments of walls of the Byzantine church, with the tradition that the rock floor of the crypt is where Jesus stood during the Transfiguration.
For our next spot, we headed west into Nazareth for the Church of Annunciation.
The church commemorates the biblical event where the angel Gabriel visited Mary and announced that she would bear God's son. At the site, a 4th century church was discovered, featuring a grotto with the foundation stone inscribed with Gabriel's greeting, "Hail Mary." This area is traditionally believed to be where Mary's house once stood. Above this grotto, a towering cupola dominates modern-day Nazareth, surmounted by a lantern symbolizing the light of the world.
Completed in 1969, the massive 2-story basilica is strikingly modern in architectural style and colorful decoration, making it the largest Christian church in the Middle East. Over a door on the southern side stands a statue of Mary, welcoming all visitors to her home. The lower level of the Church of Annunciation enshrines a sunken grotto, which contains the traditional cave home of the Virgin Mary. This grotto is flanked by remains of earlier churches on the site, with its entrance sometimes closed by a protective grille. Inside, an altar bears the Latin inscription, "Here the Word was made flesh."
To the left of the grotto entrance is a mosaic floor inscribed with the words, "Gift to Conan, Deacon of Jerusalem," who may have converted Mary's house into the first church on the site around 427. In front of the grotto is another simple altar, surrounded by tiered seating on 3 sides. Above it, a large octagonal opening is situated directly beneath the church's cupola. It is said that the cupola represents an inverted lily opening its petals to the shrine below to symbolize Mary's purity.
The 2-story design, with one church above the other, was conceived by the Italian architect Giovanni Musio. This design preserved the remains of previous churches on the lower level and included reinforced concrete sections to mitigate earthquake risk.
The walls of the upper church feature colorful representations of the Virgin Mary in various materials presented by numerous countries.
The first church on the site, venerating Mary's home, was built around 427. The Crusaders later constructed a large basilica, which was destroyed when the Crusader kingdom fell in 1187. In 1620, the Franciscans managed to purchase the site from a local Arab ruler, but it took another 120 years before they were permitted to build a new church. When that church was demolished to make way for the modern basilica, extensive excavations revealed the remains of the ancient village of Nazareth, including silos, cisterns, and other cave dwellings.
A short walk from the Church of Annunciation is the Church of St. Joseph.
A fond tradition asserts that the Church of St. Joseph is built over the carpentry workshop of St. Joseph. Despite its name, there is no evidence that the cave over which the church is built was Joseph's workshop. Even if this is the site of the Holy Family's home, the cave is unlikely to have been a carpentry workshop in the modern sense.
Scholars believe that Joseph's work likely would have taken him away from home, possibly to the Roman city of Sepphoris, which was being rebuilt by Herod Antipas around the time the Holy Family arrived from Egypt. The building site was about a 50-minute walk from Nazareth.
The modern Church of St. Joseph was built in 1914 on the remains of a Crusader church and over a cave system, which was first mentioned by a 17th century Italian writer who described it as the house and workshop of Joseph.
A stairway in the church descends to a crypt where caverns can be seen through a grill in the floor. 7 more steps lead to a 2-meter square pit with a black and white mosaic floor, believed to have been a pre-Constantinian Christian baptistry, possibly used as early as the 1st century.
A short walk away from this church, you'll find Mary's Well, which is another site believed to be where the angel Gabriel appeared to Mary.
About a 20-minute drive northeast of Nazareth, we visited the Franciscan wedding church in Cana, believed to be the site of the wedding feast at Cana where Jesus performed his first public miracle of turning water into wine. As a side note, Jesus also performed his second public miracle in Cana, which was the remote healing of an official's son in Capernaum, about 32 kilometers away.
It is significant to note that the actual location of Cana is uncertain, with several possible sites, but the Franciscans established their church at this location in 1641, relying on the testimony of early pilgrims like St. Jerome. Excavations beneath the current church dating from the early 1900s have uncovered evidence of an early place of worship, possibly a Jewish Christian synagogue, as well as first-century dwellings and an ancient basilica.
At the church, a small stone cistern was found in the crypt, further supporting the site's historical significance. Street-side vendors in Cana also sell wine, adding to the location's cultural heritage.
Afterwards, we headed about 30 minutes northwest to Capernaum National Park, located on the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee. Capernaum, once a fish market and frontier post, became Jesus' home and the site of many of his miracles. It was also home to the first disciples he called, fisherman Peter, Andrew, James, John, and the tax collector Matthew.
In Capernaum, Jesus worshipped and taught in the synagogue, impressing locals as he spoke with authority. This synagogue was the location of Jesus' I am the bread of life discourse. Many of Jesus' healing miracles occurred in Capernaum, including the healing of Peter's mother-in-law and the daughter of Jairus, the synagogue's leader.
Over time, Capernaum fell into ruin, and it was only rediscovered in 1838 by a visiting scholar who noted its desolate state.
Today, an ultra-modern Catholic church stands on 8 pillars over an excavation site believed to be Peter's house, where Jesus likely stayed. Archaeologists have found evidence suggesting one room in the complex was venerated as a house church since the mid-1st century. Graffiti on its plaster walls referred to Jesus as Lord and Christ, indicating early Christian gatherings.
In the 5th century, an octagonal church was built around this room, and the present church, dedicated in 1990, maintains the octagonal design. Nearby, a partly reconstructed synagogue built in the 4th or 5th century sits on the foundations of the original synagogue where Jesus taught. This impressive structure, with ornately carved decorations, contrasts its white limestone with the local black basalt of the older synagogue. At the synagogue, just as seen at the western wall, you can see prayer notes being slipped between the cracks of the rocks.
There is something surreal about listening to the readings of the Bible for years and then finally seeing the locations for yourself. Visiting Capernaum, situated next to the Sea of Galilee, was an incredible moment.
A short 10-minute drive from Capernaum is the Church of the Beatitudes, situated on a small hill overlooking the Sea of Galilee. This hill is traditionally regarded as the site where Jesus delivered the Sermon on the Mount. The current church, built in 1938, stands near the ruins of a 4th century Byzantine church, which includes a rock-cut cistern and remnants of a small monastery.
Christian pilgrims have commemorated this site since at least the 4th century. The pilgrimage area in her Holy Land itinerary mentions the area where Jesus is believed to have taught the Beatitudes. Both popes, Paul VI and John Paul II, celebrated Mass at the Church of the Beatitudes during their visits to the Holy Land.
While the exact site of the Sermon on the Mount is unknown, the 8-sided Church of the Beatitudes is a commemorative landmark. The Mount is also thought to be where Jesus met his apostles after his resurrection and commissioned them to make disciples of all nations.
The elegant octagonal Church of Beatitudes was designed by Italian architect Antonio Barluzzi, who was the same architect that designed the Church of the Transfiguration. Its 8 sides represent the 8 Beatitudes depicted in Latin in the upper windows. The church features a centrally placed altar with an ark, surrounded by symbols of the 7 virtues in the mosaic floor.
The Sermon on the Mount represents a compilation of Jesus' core teachings on how his followers should live in right relationship with God and others.
A quick few minutes drive back down towards the Sea of Galilee on Tabgha Beach is the Church of the Primacy of St. Peter.
This black basalt building, constructed in 1934, is the alleged spot of Jesus' reinstatement of Peter as the chief among the apostles, the site of the miraculous catch of fish, where Jesus made his 3rd appearance to his disciples after his resurrection, and the location of St. Peter's reconciliation to Jesus.
According to the Bible, Peter and 6 other disciples had been fishing all night without success. At daybreak, Jesus stood on the beach, though they did not recognize him. He instructed them to cast their net on the right side of their boat, resulting in a miraculous catch of fish.
When the disciples brought the net ashore, they found Jesus had prepared breakfast on a charcoal fire. The rock incorporated into the church floor is traditionally believed to be the spot where Jesus prepared this meal, known to pilgrims as Mensa Christi,
the table of Christ. After breakfast, Jesus asked Peter 3 times, "Do you love me?" Peter's affirmative responses countered his 3-fold denial of Jesus before the crucifixion. Jesus then gave Peter a 3-fold commission: feed my lambs, tend my sheep, and feed my sheep. This event affirmed Peter's primacy as head of the apostles.
Beside the church, a garden area is set up for group worship. Between this area and the Sea of Galilee stands a modern bronze statue of Jesus symbolically commissioning Peter with a shepherd's crook.
Right next door is the Church of Loaves and Fish in Tabgha, located in the northwestern shore of the Sea of Galilee. Tabgha is renowned for Jesus' miraculous multiplication of the loaves and fish to feed a multitude. Situated at the foot of the Mount of Beatitudes, about 3 kilometers southwest of Capernaum, the name Tabgha means 7 springs, referring to the warm sulfurous springs that enter the Sea of Galilee here, attracting fish, especially in winter.
This tranquil spot was a favorite for fishermen from nearby Capernaum. It would be easy to imagine Jesus speaking from a boat in one of the small bays, with crowds gathering on the shore.
The modern Church of Multiplication of the Loaves and Fish at Tabgha stands at the site of a 4th century church and features Byzantine mosaic decorations that are among the finest in the Holy Land. The vibrant mosaics depict the area's flora and fauna, and beneath the altar is the rock where it is believed Jesus placed the loaves and fish when he blessed them.
This sign reveals that the early church was built along the Via Maris, meaning the way of the sea. This ancient coastal path and trade route dating back to the Bronze Age, which is 3000 BC to 12,000 BC, connected various civilizations. The route extended from modern-day Cairo to Damascus, linking with other major trade routes of its time, including the Silk Road. Over 5,000 years, countless people traveled this pathway, traders with their wares, individuals seeking a better life, and military forces heading into battle. It is likely that many significant biblical figures also used this pathway.
In particular, it's fascinating to consider that Jesus chose to live in Galilee and began his public ministry in an area close to this major trade route, potentially using it as a springboard for his teachings to reach many different regions.
About a 10-minute drive south was our final historical site visit for the day, which was the town of Magdala. This site offers daily tours free of charge. We made an attempt to offer a tip to our excellent guide, but even that was respectfully declined.
For synagogues to have mosaics, right? And mosaics are very common during the Byzantine period. Here you'll find a lot of them that having a 1st century mosaic is like, whoa, this mosaic was 2,000 years ago here, you know? It is original, it's been restored.
This town is believed to be the hometown of Mary Magdalene and the place where Jesus likely taught and healed the afflicted. Magdala was a significant 1st century port on the Sea of Galilee, serving as a hub for trade and commerce and exported salted fish. Recent archaeological discoveries have made this area a pilgrimage destination.
Mary Magdalene, a prominent figure in Christian history, was one of the few individuals named in the Gospels as present at Christ's crucifixion and the first recorded witness of the resurrection. Whether she lived in Magdala or was merely born there remains unknown.
Located on the western shore of the Sea of Galilee between Tiberias and Capernaum, Magdala is mentioned in the New Testament. According to Matthew's Gospel, Jesus traveled there by boat. Magdala was approximately 10 kilometers from Capernaum, where Jesus based much of his ministry.
In the 4th century, a church was built on the supposed site of Mary Magdalene's house, destroyed in the 7th century and later rebuilt by the Crusaders. Recent excavations by Franciscan archaeologists have uncovered Magdala's ancient port, a city grid, marketplace, villas, and mosaics. The discovery of a massive tower foundation may explain the city's name, as both Magdala in Aramaic and Migdal in Hebrew, meaning tower.
Later, in recent times, additional archaeological findings on the adjacent property led to the discovery of 3 interconnected ritual baths and a synagogue, featuring ornate mosaics and frescoes.
In the Migdal synagogue, the significant Magdala stone was unearthed. The stone is a rectangular limestone block with 4 legs, carved with reliefs that are considered to depict the Jerusalem temple. The stone was assumed to have been made by an artist who had seen the temple before it was destroyed by the Roman military. The stone functioned as a furniture item related to the reading of Torah. The front of the stone is decorated with a menorah, which would be the earliest depiction of a menorah in a synagogue. This archaeological find could arguably be the most important discovery in Israel, that testifies to the strong connection between the Jews and the Jerusalem temple.
In 2014, the Duc in Altum, Latin for put out into the deep, church opened at this site, distinguished by its rich mosaics and murals and its focus on women in the Bible. It is one of the most striking churches in the Holy Land. The entrance, known as the Woman's Atrium, is dedicated to all women followers of Jesus. 7 of the atrium's pillars are engraved with the names of the women mentioned in the Gospels, while the 8th column remains blank, symbolically honoring all women who visit the church.
Surrounding the atrium, 4 chapels commemorate different events from Jesus' ministry in Galilee, depicted in colorful and detailed mosaic artwork. The main hall of the church is particularly stunning, designed to resemble an inverted boat. Facing east, it offers a view of the Sea of Galilee through a glass wall. The raised apse is paved with green marble, and the altar is shaped like a 1st century boat. An infinity pool in the back creates an illusion that makes the altar boat appear to float on the lake itself.
Beneath the main hall lies the Encounter Chapel, built around an ancient paved courtyard dating back 2,000 years. This courtyard is believed to have been Magdala's primary fish market, located near its wharf. Behind the chapel's altar, a hyper-realistic large painting depicts Jesus healing a hemorrhaging woman, adding to the chapel's profound historical and spiritual resonance.
As an added bonus, towards the end of our tour, we witnessed unique bird formations painted across the sky, which only added to our experience.
If you're looking for a great place to stay in the area, we recommend Caesar Premier Tiberias. It's just a 12-minute drive south of Magdala, located right along the Sea of Galilee with several excellent restaurants nearby.
As we show you some footage from TripAdvisor, we'd really like to share a memorable story about this property that has just really stuck with us. In our trip planning, we tend to get a little anxious booking hotel rooms a little too far in advance that we may miss out on some sort of deal. But for this hotel, we reserved a few months ahead. When we checked in, the front desk attendant actually noticed the rate of our booking and mentioned that it was too high. He then refunded the amount and offered us a better deal.
Never in our lives have we ever been told that we paid too much for a room and then gotten a refund. To top it off, they gave us a free dinner that night. We were completely blown away by their graciousness, and we felt incredibly welcome, and there's no doubt that on our next visit, that's where we'll be staying. The next morning, we woke up early, and we made a 2-hour and 30-minute drive to Masada National Park. Our drive will take us from the lush landscape of the Galilee region to the stark, dramatic beauty of the Judean desert.
Our journey took us south along Route 90, a highway that runs parallel to the border between Israel and Jordan. This drive is a feast for the eyes, with ever-changing scenery that transitions from fertile valleys to arid deserts. A fascinating aspect of this route is that the Jordan River flows south from the Sea of Galilee and empties into the Dead Sea. For much of this section, the river serves as a natural boundary with Jordan, enhancing the sense of traversing a historically and geographically significant landscape.
As we neared the Dead Sea, the lowest point on Earth, the landscape transformed dramatically. The surrounding greenery of Galilee gave way to the surreal, otherworldly terrain. The Dead Sea, known for its hypersaline water and mineral-rich mud, shimmered in the sunlight.
Continuing along the western shore of the Dead Sea, we soon arrived at Masada National Park. Masada, a fortress atop a plateau, is one of Israel's most significant archaeological sites and a symbol of Jewish heroism.
Built by Herod the Great in the 1st century BC, it served as a palace complex and later a stronghold for Jewish rebels during the First Jewish-Roman War.
To reach the summit, we took the cable car, a brief 3-minute ride that offers panoramic views of the Dead Sea and the surrounding desert. For those who prefer a more physical challenge, the Snake Path, a winding trail up the mountain, provides an alternative route with equally stunning vistas. It takes about 1 hour to about 90 minutes to climb, depending on physical fitness. And if you're going back the same way, a typical descent is about 35 minutes.
At the top of the plateau, we explored the well-preserved ruins of Herod's palace, including storerooms, bathhouses, a synagogue, a Byzantine church, and the northern palace with its breathtaking views.
One question that may come to mind when visiting this fortress is, how did they get water? Well, there is a model of the fortress that shows an elaborate system designed to capture water from flash floods through channels that flow into massive cisterns on the cliffsides where the water was held.
So I've been wondering, how did they get water?
Funny enough, you should ask. I just happen to have a diagram here that I can show you how they got water. A little cup here we're going to consider to be the rainwater. As it rains, you can see that they've built these little canals that go all the way down through the mountain. Along there, you'll see the holes dug into the side of the mountain. As it rains and the water travels down, you can see it's going to pass right by all of the holes. And as they pass the holes, the water seeps into there and it fills up their cisterns, which gives them an endless supply of drinking water.
I'm very impressed.
You know.
On the west side of the fortress, you could view remnants of the Roman siege, including a ramp built by the Romans to breach the fortress, which is still visible and tells a story of determination and tragedy.
Well, it is difficult to determine the exact length of the Roman siege. When it became evident that their ramp was going to breach the fortress, the 960 Jewish zealots chose to die by their own hands rather than surrender to the Romans. These actions have become a powerful symbol of freedom and resistance to the Jewish people.
The site was excavated in the 1960s and has since become a UNESCO World Heritage Site, drawing visitors from around the world.
As we descended from Masada, we reflected on our journey. It was more than just a road trip. It was a passage through time, tracing the footsteps of ancient civilizations and witnessing the stark beauty of Israel's landscape.
Masada is not just a historical site, it's a testament to the human spirit's enduring quest and a poignant reminder of the sacrifices made in that pursuit. Our trip left us with a profound appreciation for the history, culture, and the natural beauty of this remarkable region.
Next up, about an hour and 40-minute drive, we headed to Herodium Park. Herod the Great, who ruled Judea on behalf of Rome, was renowned for his massive architectural projects. On our journey so far, we've encountered the remnants of his grand constructions in Caesarea and Masada. Perhaps most significantly, he is famous for the expansion of the Second Temple in Jerusalem, of which only the retaining walls, including the Western Wall, remain standing. We will explore that site later in the episode, along with his enclosure in the Cave of the Patriarchs in Hebron.
For now, our focus shifts to Herodium, the only site named after Herod. This ancient fortress and palace, built between 23 and 15 BC, is located about 15 kilometers south of Jerusalem and approximately 5 kilometers southeast of Bethlehem.
As we approached Herodium, the first thing that stuck out to us was the imposing artificial hill rising dramatically from the landscape. The fortress sits atop this hill, offering commanding views of the surrounding area, a strategic advantage for any ruler. This partly man-made mountain is capped with the remains of Herod's splendid palace, bathhouses, and fortifications, including a double wall with sturdy towers. From this vantage point, mirrors reflecting the sun could be used to convey messages between Jerusalem and Masada.
The site also boasts a small theater that can accommodate 400 guests, complete with a private box for the king. Later, during the Great Revolt, the Zealots captured the fortress in 66 AD. During that time, they converted a structure into a synagogue and dug secret tunnels. After 4 years under siege, the rebels finally surrendered to the Roman army. During the Bar Kokhba revolt, the fortress was captured again, and more secret tunnels were dug around the cisterns.
Although the excavation of Herodium started in 1962, the location of Herod's grave eluded archaeologists until 2007. That is when an archaeological team uncovered pieces of a large sarcophagus made of pink Jerusalem limestone, decorated with expertly carved floral motifs. It was a 2-story mausoleum about 25 meters high. During our visit, we were able to see several models of the tomb.
Another significant finding at the site was the Pontius Pilate ring, a bronze signet ring that bore the design of a ceremonial wine vessel encircled by an inscription in Greek, translating to Pilate. Pontius Pilate was the governor of Judea during the time when Jesus was crucified.
Our visit to Herodium was a journey through time, unveiling layers of history and grandeur of Herod's architectural vision. The blend of strategic military engineering, opulent palatial design, and significant historical artifacts made Herodium a captivating destination. As we descended from the hill, we left with a deeper appreciation for the historical richness and complexity of this remarkable site.
The next section of this episode is going to be focused on the sites that we visited in Jerusalem.
Yad Vashem, Israel's official Holocaust memorial, stands as a profound symbol of remembrance. Its name, derived from the Hebrew phrase, a memorial and a name, from the book of Isaiah, encapsulates its mission to honor the millions of Jewish victims, ensuring their names and legacies endure, even without descendants to remember them.
Situated on a 45-acre campus on Mount Herzl in Jerusalem, Yad Vashem consists of museums, exhibitions, monuments, sculptures, and memorial sites. It ranks among the top 25 museums globally and is the third highest ranked activity in Jerusalem according to TripAdvisor.
Out of respect for the solemnity and gravity of the memorial, we don't have much to share in terms of pictures or videos. The experience is deeply personal and reflective, and capturing it through photographs would detract from the contemplative atmosphere intended to honor the memories of the Holocaust victims. By refraining from taking pictures, we preserved the integrity of the space and allowed ourselves to fully immerse in the profound historical and emotional journey. However, if you want to see images of the site and get more information, we highly suggest that you visit this site.
After checking into the visitor center, we proceeded to the Holocaust History Museum, passing through the serene Avenue of the Righteous Among Nations. This path is lined with trees honoring non-Jews who risked their lives to save Jews during the Holocaust, each with a plaque recording the names and countries of origin of those honored.
The Holocaust History Museum is an architecturally striking structure. It's a prism-like triangular building that penetrates the mountain from one side to the other, with both ends dramatically overhanging into the open air. A 200-meter-long skylight brings in daylight, contrasting with the darker areas required for multimedia presentations, which could symbolize the struggle between light and darkness, or life and death. Inside, the museum offers a chronological journey through the Holocaust with historical artifacts, photographs, and personal testimonies, beginning with Jewish life before the Nazis' rise to power, through the horrors of World War II, to acts of resistance and the aftermath faced by survivors.
One of the museum's most moving sections is the Hall of Names, a memorial to each Jewish victim of the Holocaust. The main circular hall houses over 2 million pages of testimony. The ceiling features a 10-meter-high cone displaying 600 photographs and fragments of testimonies. The victims' portraits are reflected in the water at the base of an imposing cone carved out of the mountain's bedrock. At the far end of the hall is a glass screen onto which pages of testimony are projected.
One of the most haunting sections of Yad Vashem is the Children's Memorial, which is dedicated to the 1.5 million Jewish children who perished. It is housed in an underground cavern where their names and countries of origin are softly spoken, creating a very somber atmosphere.
Yad Vashem also includes an art museum with the works created during the Holocaust and by survivors, showcasing resilience and creativity even in the darkest times.
Our visit concluded in the Garden of the Righteous, honoring those who stood against the Holocaust horrors.
To briefly summarize, visiting Yad Vashem is a deeply moving experience, emphasizing the importance of memory and education to ensure that such atrocities are never forgotten nor repeated.
The Israel Museum is a sprawling complex that promises an enriching blend of art, archaeology, and cultural history. There's an archaeology wing, fine arts wing, a youth wing, art garden, and two main highlights for us were the Shrine of the Book and the model of the Second Temple of Jerusalem.
To be brief, the archaeology wing is a treasure trove of artifacts from different periods of history in the land of Israel. From prehistoric tools to artifacts from the First and Second Temple, the exhibits are meticulously curated. It's important to keep in mind that some areas of the museum have signs prohibiting photography, mainly to protect the delicate items from light exposure.
The Fine Arts Wing was a feast for the eyes, featuring a diverse collection of art from around the world. Here you can marvel at works from European masters, contemporary pieces, and a striking collection of Jewish art.
The Youth Wing is both educational and interactive, perfect for families. The hands-on exhibits and creative workshops are designed to engage younger visitors and making learning fun.
The Art Garden, designed by the famed Japanese-American sculptor Isamu Noguchi, offers a serene space filled with modern and contemporary sculptures. As we strolled through the garden, the interplay between the natural landscape and the artistic creations was captivating.
Now for our top highlights. The Shrine of the Book is home to the Dead Sea Scrolls. The white dome of the shrine is an iconic symbol, which was inspired by the lids of the jars in which the scrolls were found. Inside, the scrolls are displayed in dim lighting to protect these ancient manuscripts. It is important to note that photography is strictly prohibited here to prevent damage from the light and to preserve the solemn atmosphere of the space. The scrolls provide a fascinating glimpse into Jewish history and the development of the Hebrew Bible.
One of the most impressive exhibits is the model of the Second Temple of Jerusalem, a detailed 1:50 scale model of the city as it appeared before its destruction in 70 AD. Walking around the model gives a comprehensive view of ancient Jerusalem and its significant landmarks. This outdoor exhibit is perfect for photography, and we took many pictures marveling at the painstaking detail. Here is a closer picture of the Temple Mount and the recreation of the Second Temple of Jerusalem.
In conclusion, the Israel Museum is a must-visit for anyone interested in the rich history and diverse cultures that have shaped this region. It offers a profound journey through time, enhanced by its thoughtful exhibits and stunning collections. Whether you're an art lover, history buff, or simply curious, the museum promises a day of discovery and inspiration.
Before diving into more sites within Jerusalem, let's briefly discuss our wonderful stay at the Arthur Hotel, an Atlas boutique hotel. Currently ranked as the number 3 hotel in Jerusalem on TripAdvisor, it exceeded our expectations. The room was perfect for our needs, and the breakfast was exceptional. As an added bonus, the hotel offers a happy hour with complimentary snacks and wine. I especially enjoyed the self-serve wine machine.
For transportation, the hotel is just steps away from a light rail stop, making it easy to get around the city. In terms of shopping, it's about a 13-minute walk to the Mamilla Mall, which boasts 140 stores, restaurants, and cafes. The area around the hotel is also filled with fantastic dining options. We recommend Chakra, a Mediterranean restaurant with a constantly changing menu. To give you an idea of what they serve, here's a peek at today's menu. We also love Piccolino, an Italian restaurant that occasionally has live music. And as a final recommendation, we had an amazing dinner at the Cheese and Wine Rooftop Restaurant. If your goal is to explore the historic or religious sites around the old city of Jerusalem, it is just a 15-minute walk from the hotel. To give you a glimpse of the walk from the hotel to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, here is a brief video of our journey.
It's important to note that we visited in late December, which had the added bonus of seeing Israel decorated for the holidays. Also, like other cities in Europe, Jerusalem featured a Christmas market. Now for a brief overview of the Old City. The Old City refers to the roughly 1 square kilometer area that is enclosed by historic walls in the eastern part of Jerusalem. The Old City has a total of 11 gates, but only 7 are open. Jaffa, Zion, Dung, also known as Silwan and Mugrabi, Lions, or St. Stephen's, Herod's, Damascus, and Nu.
Before we get into some of the sites in the Old City of Jerusalem, it would be important to discuss the 4 distinct quarters of the city: the Jewish quarter, the Muslim quarter, the Christian quarter, and the Armenian quarter. Each area offers a unique glimpse into the rich heritage of this ancient city.
The Jewish quarter lies in the southwestern sector of the walled city, and it stretches from Zion Gate in the south, along the Armenian quarter on the west, up to the Street of the Chain in the north, and extends to the western wall and the Temple Mount in the east. This quarter includes Cardo, which is short for Cardo Maximus, a wide street that stretched across Jerusalem in Byzantine times. Parts of the street where Ottoman-era roofing was still intact were developed into commercial areas, with some Byzantine-era columns repositioned. The main site in this quarter is the Western Wall, which is the holiest site in Judaism, where Jews from around the world come to pray.
The Muslim quarter covers 77 acres in the northeastern sector of the Old City. The quarter is the largest and the most populous of the 4 quarters, and extends from the Lion's Gate in the east, along the northern wall of the Temple Mount in the south, to the Damascus Gate in the west. The Temple Mount includes the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is one of the holiest sites in Islam. Also, the Via Dolorosa, the path believed to be walked by Jesus on his way to the crucifixion, passes through the Muslim quarter.
The Christian quarter is situated in the northwestern corner of the Old City, extending from the New Gate in the north, along the western wall of the Old City as far as the Jaffa Gate, along the Jaffa Gate in the south, bordering on the Jewish and Armenian quarters as far as the Damascus Gate in the east, where it borders the Muslim quarter. The main site in this quarter is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. This is believed to be the site of Jesus' crucifixion, burial, and resurrection, which makes it one of the most sacred places in Christianity.
The Armenian quarter is located in the southwestern corner of the Old City. It can be accessed through the Zion Gate and Jaffa Gate. The Armenian quarter is separated from the Christian quarter by David Street and from the Jewish quarter by Chabad Street. This quarter contains the Cathedral of St. James, which is the principal church of the Armenian Patriarchate of Jerusalem. Coincidentally, this is the first site we will discuss in the Old City of Jerusalem.
Close to the Zion Gate in the Armenian quarter, the 12th century St. James Cathedral stands as a monument to Jerusalem's rich history. This cathedral is dedicated to 2 apostles of Jesus, James, son of Zebedee, aka James the Greater, and James the Just, aka James the Less. James the Just is known for being the first leader of the Jerusalem Church, serving as principal church of Armenian Patriarchate of Jerusalem. It is a cornerstone of the Armenian Christian community.
The cathedral, nestled within a walled compound, is one of the few surviving Crusader-era churches, built on the remnants of a 5th century Georgian church. It has withstood the test of time, offering a glimpse into Jerusalem's medieval past. Historically, St. James has been a refuge for the Armenian poor, starting in 1195, when a large hospice was attached to it. Over the centuries, local Armenian merchants contributed to its beautification and expansion, solidifying its status as the heart of the Armenian quarter.
The interior of the cathedral is breathtaking, with its gilded altars, massive chandeliers, intricate carvings, and colorful tiles. During services, rich vestments, incense, and chanting create a mystical atmosphere, enhanced by the natural light filtering through high-set windows and oil lamps.
Significantly, it is believed that the church houses the relics of its namesakes, the head of St. James the Greater and the body of St. James the Less. The chapel of St. James the Great, located on the left side of the church, marks the site of his martyrdom. In front of the cathedral are two thrones. The larger, dedicated to St. James the Less, marks the burial place, where the smaller throne serves as the seat of the Armenian Orthodox Patriarch.
After visiting St. James Cathedral, we were set to meet up with a guide for a private tour of Jerusalem. Our meeting point was the Western Wall, which is located in the Jewish quarter of the Old City.
In Jerusalem's Old City, one of the most sacred places for all of Judaism is the Western Wall, also known as the Kotel. Built by Herod the Great in 20 BC, it is the last remnant of a retaining wall that surrounded the site of the first and second temples of Jerusalem. It is a key pilgrimage site where Jews pray and place written petitions between its stones. Also known as the Wailing Wall, it symbolizes grief over the temple's destruction. Members of the Jewish faith often pray here, reading from the Torah. The visible wall includes original Herodian stones and those added after the Roman destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. The prayer area is divided by gender, with head coverings required for men and married women. Out of respect for the Jewish Sabbath, electronic devices are prohibited on Saturdays. Later on in the episode, we'll discuss the underground Western Wall tours that we highly recommend.
Near the Western Wall area is the entrance to the Temple Mount, also known as the Al-Aqsa Mosque Compound or the Haram al-Sharif. A wooden walkway leads to security checks, including metal detectors and X-ray scanners.
For non-Muslim visitors, it is crucial to double-check the times for the Temple Mount. During our visit, in the summer, April to September, you could visit between 8:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m., and then from 1:30 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. In the winter, from October to March, to adjust for the daylight, the visiting hours are between 7:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m., and in the afternoon, from 12:30 p.m. to 1:30 p.m.
The Temple Mount is closed on Fridays, Saturdays, and Muslim holidays, and may close unexpectedly. During peak seasons, arrive at least an hour early to avoid waiting in long lines. If this site is a must-see for your trip, I would recommend planning to see it early in your itinerary to allow for flexibility if an unanticipated closure occurs.
The Temple Mount is sacred to Jews, Christians, and Muslims. It is traditionally identified as Mount Moriah, where Abraham prepared to sacrifice his son, Isaac for Jews and Christians, and Ishmael for Muslims.
Some historians estimate that King Solomon constructed the first temple on Temple Mount around 950 BC. The temple is believed to house the Ark of the Covenant, which contained the Ten Commandments. The Babylonians would destroy the temple and exile the Jews around 587 BC. It is believed the Ark was hidden in an underground chamber, but its whereabouts today remain unknown.
50 years later, Jews were allowed to return from Babylon, and the temple was rebuilt. Around 20 BC, Herod the Great refurbished and expanded the Second Temple. Herod's expansion project nearly doubled the Temple Mount's area, creating a vast platform with a retaining wall of massive limestone blocks, some weighing over 100 tons. The Temple Mount featured covered and columned galleries, including Solomon's portico and the royal stoa.
The Romans, under Emperor Titus, destroyed Herod's temple in 70 AD, ending the First Jewish Revolt.
After the Roman Empire adopted Christianity in the 4th century, Emperor Constantine's mother, Saint Helena, reportedly built a church on the Temple Mount. However, the area was largely ignored by Christians who focused on the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
In the 7th century, Arab Muslims conquered Jerusalem and converted the Temple Mount into an Islamic sanctuary, constructing the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque.
When Crusaders captured Jerusalem in 1099, they converted the Dome of the Rock to the Temple of the Lord, and the Al-Aqsa Mosque later became the headquarters for the Knights Templar.
Less than a century later, the Muslim Sultan Saladin reconquered Jerusalem, restoring the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque.
Later, in the 1967 Six-Day War, Israeli forces would capture the Temple Mount from Jordan. Since this time, Israel has left the management of the area to an Islamic foundation known as the Waqf.
In Judaism, the Temple Mount is the most sacred site. It is where Abraham demonstrated his devotion to God by preparing to sacrifice his son. It is also the location of both ancient Jewish temples. The innermost sanctum of the temple, the Holy of Holies, was believed to be the dwelling place of God's presence. Thus, the western wall, being the closest accessible site to the former Holy of Holies, holds immense sacred significance for Jews as a place of prayer and connection to their spiritual heritage.
For Christians, beyond Abraham's example of devotion, the Temple Mount is notably featured in the life of Jesus as described in the Bible. Jesus was presented at the temple, predicted the temple's destruction, and overturned the money changers' tables there. Solomon's portico on the east side of the Temple Mount is likely where Mary and Joseph found the young Jesus among the teachers of the law. This area is central to many key events in Jesus' life and ministry.
For Muslims, the Haram al-Sharif, or the Noble Sanctuary, is the third holiest site in Islam after Mecca and Medina. Muslims believe the Dome of the Rock covers the rock from which the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven during his night journey. This site symbolizes a direct connection to the divine and is a place of deep religious significance and reverence for Muslims worldwide.
The Dome of the Rock is an iconic symbol of the Old City of Jerusalem. It is an Islamic shrine at the center of the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound that was built around 691 to 692 AD. It is known as the world's oldest surviving work of Islamic architecture. As an Islamic shrine, only Muslims are permitted to enter.
Historically, the shrine is built over the foundation stone or noble rock that bears great significance in the Abrahamic religions. One belief is that this is the place where God created the world. As mentioned previously, it is believed to be the site where Abraham attempted to sacrifice his son. Some Jewish sources identify this stone as marking the location of the inner sanctuary or the Holy of Holies within the temple, which is the former place of the Ark of the Covenant. The Holy of Holies is believed to be the place where God's divine presence is manifested more than any other place. This site's great significance for Muslims derives from traditions connecting it to the creation of the world and the belief that the night journey of Muhammad began from the rock at the center of the structure.
On the southern side of the rock, steps lead down to an ancient cave known as the Well of Souls, to which many Jewish and Islamic legends are attached. The name Well of Souls derives from a legend that the spirits of the dead are awaiting Judgment Day at this location.
The shrine is octagonal, crowned at its center by a golden dome approximately 66 feet in diameter. The interior is lavishly decorated with mosaics and marble, creating a stunning visual representation of its rich historical and religious significance.
From the Temple Mount, it is a brief 15-minute walk to another significant mount, which is the Mount of Olives. Rising to more than 800 meters, the Mount of Olives offers an unrivaled view of the old city of Jerusalem and its surroundings. Named for the olive trees that once covered its slopes, the Mount of Olives is the location of many biblical events.
In the Old Testament, King David fled over the Mount of Olives to escape his son's rebellion. King Solomon built pagan temples on the Mount of Olives for gods of his foreign wives after turning away from God.
In the New Testament, Jesus frequently traveled over the Mount of Olives, often praying or resting there. He made his triumphal entry into Jerusalem from the Mount on Palm Sunday and wept over the city's future destruction. It is also where he gave a major address to his disciples, foretelling his second coming. And it's where he prayed the night before his arrest. According to tradition, Jesus ascended into heaven from the Mount of Olives.
Jewish tradition holds that the Messiah will descend the Mount of Olives on Judgment Day and enter Jerusalem through the Golden Gate. Because of this belief, Jews have sought to be buried on the slopes of the mount, making it one of Jerusalem's main cemeteries, with an estimated 150,000 graves.
The first site we visited on the Mount of Olives was the Garden of Gethsemane and the Church of All Nations, or the Basilica of Agony.
The Garden of Gethsemane, near the foot of the Mount of Olives, is named in the New Testament as the place where Jesus went with his disciples to pray the night before he was crucified. Covering about 1,200 square meters, the garden was well known to the disciples as it is close to the natural route from the Temple of the Mount of Olives to Bethany. The name Gethsemane means oil press in Hebrew, and oil is still pressed from the fruit of the garden's 8 ancient olive trees.
The garden's ancient and gnarled olive trees give it a timeless character. Behind a fence of iron tracery with Byzantine motifs, these trees create a spiritual atmosphere for visitors. While the current trees were not standing during Christ's time, they are believed to be descendants of those that were. This is because when an olive tree is cut down, shoots will come back from the roots to create a new tree. Some research has dated the root material from the garden to be about 2,300 years old.
Adjacent to the Garden of Gethsemane stands the Church of All Nations, also known as the Basilica of the Agony. Built over the rock where Jesus is believed to have prayed in agony before his arrest, the church was completed in 1924, marking the third church on this site.
The Church of All Nations blends the facade of a typical Roman basilica with a roof of 12 small domes, suggesting an Eastern character. A richly colored triangular mosaic at the top of the facade makes it a Jerusalem landmark. Inside, the church is kept in semi-darkness to evoke the night time of the agony, with subdued natural light filtering through the violent blue alabaster windows. The ceiling domes recreate a star-studded night sky, surrounded by olive branches reminiscent of the Garden of Gethsemane.
In front of the high altar is a flat outcrop of rock, traditionally identified as the Rock of Agony, where Jesus prayed. The church's three apses feature large mosaics depicting the kiss of Judas, Christ in agony, being consoled by the angel, and the arrest of Jesus.
The basilica is called the Church of All Nations because many countries contributed to its construction. National symbols of 12 donor countries adorn the ceiling domes, while mosaics in the apses were donated by Hungary, Ireland, and Poland. The wrought iron wreath around the Rock of Agony was given by Austria and symbolizes a crown of thorns with olive branches, featuring birds and sacrificial silver doves.
During construction, parts of the mosaic floor from the original Byzantine church were discovered and preserved under glass in the south aisle. The architect decided to replicate this 4th century mosaic design in the floor of the modern church, suggesting a spiritual continuity throughout the ages. The facade's triangular area above the great portal displays a mosaic of Christ as the mediator between God and mankind, with statues of the 4 evangelists separated by 3 arches below.
The architect of this modern church was Antonio Barluzzi. Within this episode, you have previously seen his works with the Church of the Transfiguration, the Church of the Beatitudes, and later on in this episode, you'll see his other works, the Church of the Flagellation, the Church of St. John the Baptist, the Church of the Visitation, Dominus Flevit, and the Catholic Chapel of the Calvary and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
Facing the Church of All Nations is the Golden Gate in the Eastern Wall, through which the Jews expect the Messiah to enter Jerusalem. Christians and Muslims generally believe that this was the gate through which Jesus entered Jerusalem.
The Church of St. Anne, the best preserved Crusader church in Jerusalem, marks the traditional site of the home of Jesus' maternal grandparents, Anne and Joachim, and the birthplace of the Virgin Mary. Located just north of the Temple Mount, about 50 meters inside St. Stephen's or Lion's Gate. During Jesus' time, the gate was called the Sheep Gate because it was where sheep or animals were brought to the temple for sacrifice.
The Church of St. Anne stands in a tranquil courtyard with trees, shrubs, and flowers, offering a serene contrast to the bustling streets and alleys of the Muslim quarter.
Built around 1140 AD by the Crusaders, the Church of St. Anne is renowned for its remarkable acoustics, with even a small choral group sounding like a large congregation in a vast cathedral. This is a short clip of Jessica testing out the acoustics.
I'm sorry.
The church's fortress-like appearance, with strong lines and thick walls, offers a space for prayer and contemplation without distraction. Its design is unusually asymmetrical. Opposite columns do not match, windows vary in size, and buttresses differ in thickness and height.
The current basilica stands on the site of an earlier church built around 450 AD, dedicated to Mary where she was born. The Crusaders enlarged the church shortly after its construction by moving the facade forward several meters. Unlike other churches in Jerusalem, St. Anne's was not destroyed after the Muslim conquest in 1189. Instead, it was converted into an Islamic law school by Sultan Saladin, whose name appears in an Arabic inscription above the main entrance. The building was later abandoned for centuries.
In 1856, after the Crimean War, the Sultan of Istanbul offered the site to the French government in gratitude for its help during the war. France undertook extensive restoration, restoring St. Anne's as closely as possible to its original state. The church now features 3 episodes from the life of the Virgin Mary depicted at the front of the high altar: the Annunciation, the descent of Jesus from the cross, and the Nativity of Jesus.
A flight of stone steps descends from the south aisle to the crypt, believed to be the remains of the house of Anne and Joachim and the birthplace of Virgin Mary. Here, in a tiny chapel with a domed ceiling, an altar is dedicated to the birth of Mary.
Adjacent to the Church of St. Anne, the large excavation area of the pools of Bethesda reveal a fascinating blend of history and legend.
It was a pool that got the water, the rainwater from the north part of Jerusalem in it. And according to tradition, the water had a very special quality. From time to time, they bubbled. We don't know exactly what that means, but they bubbled. And if you jumped if you were sick and injured and you jumped into the water when they bubbled, you were cured.
These reservoirs and medicinal pools are renowned as the site where Jesus healed a paralyzed man, as recounted in the Gospel of John.
In John's Gospel, it is told that a man had been waiting 38 years for someone to help him into the pool. When the water was stirred, an event believed to have healing powers, Jesus told the man, "Stand up, take your mat and walk." And immediately he was made well.
For years, the exact location of the pools of Bethesda remained a mystery, as no archaeological evidence matched John's description of 5 porticos. However, in the 1900s, archaeologists unearthed 2 large water reservoirs separated by a broad rock dike, with 4 colonnaded porticos around the sides and 1 across the central dike. This discovery perfectly aligned with the Gospel account.
These reservoirs primarily collected rainwater for temple use. The associated pools and baths at Bethesda, meaning House of Mercy, were believed to have curative powers. Evidence of a pagan healing sanctuary, including marble representations of healed organs, has been found east of the pools, further highlighting the area's historical significance.
An ancient tradition places the home of Jesus' maternal grandparents, Anne and Joachim, near the pools of Bethesda, making it the birthplace of Mary. In the 5th century, the Byzantine Empress Eudocia constructed a massive basilica over the pools. Although the basilica was destroyed by the Persians in 614, the Crusaders later built a small chapel, the Church of the Paralytic, over part of its ruins. Today, the facade, the main entrance, and the apse of the Crusader chapel stand high over the pools, demonstrating the layered history of religious significance at the site.
Visiting the pools of Bethesda offers a unique glimpse into biblical history with its blend of ancient ruins and religious lore, making it a must-see destination for travelers in Jerusalem.
Stepping away from the bustling streets of Jerusalem's Old City, just a short walk west from the Church of St. Anne, we were lured to the charming Austrian Hospice. This historic refuge not only houses a renowned cafe, but also boasts an incredible rooftop view of the city.
Entering the cafe, we were greeted by the irresistible aroma of freshly baked pastries and the genuine warmth of the hospitable staff. The interior exuded a cozy ambiance with its traditional Austrian decor and comfortable seating. Following a recommendation from our guide, we eagerly ordered their famous apple strudel. Each bite was a revelation. The delicate pastry layers wrapped around a generous filling of tender apples, cinnamon, and just a hint of sweetness. It was a masterclass in Austrian baking, offering a perfect harmony of crispy textures and rich flavors.
After savoring our treats, we ascended to the rooftop terrace of the hospice. The view was nothing short of spectacular. A panoramic vista of Jerusalem's iconic skyline unfolded before us. The Dome of the Rock stood prominently amidst the cityscape, while the sun-kissed hills provided a tranquil backdrop. It was a moment of peaceful contemplation amid the vibrant energy of the city below.
In summary, the Austrian Hospice not only satisfied our craving for delicious apple strudel, but it also provided a serene sanctuary and an unparalleled view of Jerusalem.
Just steps outside the Austrian Hospice is the Ecce Homo Arch. Each year, thousands of pilgrims walk under the arch near the beginning of the Via Dolorosa, Latin for sorrowful way or way of suffering, often unaware that extensive remains of first-century Jerusalem lie beneath their feet.
For centuries, Christians believed the arch marked the place where Pontius Pilate displayed Jesus, beaten, crowned with thorns, and clothed in a purple robe, to a hostile Jerusalem crowd with the words, "Behold the man!" Ecce homo in Latin. This belief persists in many publications, though archaeology has shown that the arch did not exist at the time of Jesus.
Archaeologists say that the arch stood on a great plaza constructed by Hadrian when he rebuilt the city in 135 AD, about a century after Jesus was crucified. Large sections of the plaza remain underneath the Via Dolorosa and adjacent buildings, accessible through the Ecce Homo convent of the Sisters of Zion.
Built in the style of a triumphal arch, the Ecce Homo arch is the central span of what was originally a triple-arched gateway. The arch continues through the wall of the convent chapel, where the smaller northern arch now frames the tabernacle, under a Byzantine cross on a gilded mosaic backdrop. The southern arch has been destroyed. The Roman flagstone of Hadrian's Plaza were once thought to be the area identified in John's Gospel as the location where Jesus was condemned by Pilate. However, another theory states that it is more likely that Pilate judged Jesus at Herod the Great's palace on the site of the modern citadel inside the Jaffa Gate.
The flagstones of the plaza offer an intriguing insight into the lives of the Roman soldiers garrisoned at the nearby Antonia fortress built by Herod the Great to overlook and control the temple.
Named after Herod's patron, Mark Antony, this vast fortress was a symbol of the Roman domination of the city. In various parts of the pavement, off-duty soldiers carved the lines and squares of games they played in idle moments. One set of marks has been identified as the King's Game. Other parts of the plaza were grooved to prevent horses from slipping.
Though the Ecce Homo Arch and Hadrian's Plaza have no proven link with Jesus or Pilate, the area has a definite connection to St. Paul. After Paul was seized by Jews while visiting the temple, it was from the Antonia fortress that soldiers ran to rescue him and prevent a riot. It was on the steps leading to the fortress that Paul addressed the crowd and avoided being flogged by announcing he was a Roman citizen.
The Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen.
Every Friday afternoon, hundreds of Christians join in a procession through the old city of Jerusalem, stopping at 14 stations of the cross as they identify with the suffering of Jesus on his way to crucifixion. This route is called the Via Dolorosa. It is also the name of the principal street they follow, a narrow marketplace bustling with traders and shoppers, much like the scene would have been on the first Good Friday.
It should be noted that it is unlikely that Jesus followed this exact route on his way to Calvary. Today's Via Dolorosa originated in pious tradition rather than certain fact, but it is hallowed by the footsteps of the faithful over the centuries.
The Friday procession is typically led by Franciscan friars, custodians of some of the holy places since the 13th century. The procession starts at 4 p.m. or 3 p.m. in the winter from late October until March at the Umaria Elementary School, just inside St. Stephen's or Lion's Gate.
From this starting point, pilgrims will wind their way westward to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where the last 5 stations are located. Aside from this Friday procession, many other pilgrims individually or in groups with guides will follow the same 500-meter route during the week.
While scholars disagree on the path Jesus took on Good Friday, processions in the 4th and 5th centuries from the Mount of Olives to Calvary followed more or less along the same route taken by the modern pilgrims.
The practice of following the Stations of the Cross appears to have been developed in Europe among Christians who could not travel to the Holy Land. The number of stations varied from 7 to 18 or more.
Today's Via Dolorosa route was established in the 18th century, with the present 14 stations, but some of the stations were given their present location only in the 19th century. 9 of the 14 stations are based on gospel references. The other 5, Jesus' 3 falls, his meeting with his mother, and Veronica wiping his face, are traditional.
The main challenge in determining Jesus' path to Calvary lies in pinpointing the exact location of Pontius Pilate's Praetorium, where Jesus is condemned and given the cross to carry. Scholars have identified 3 possible locations.
Herod the Great's palace or citadel, which dominated the upper city. The remains of the citadel complex with its Tower of David are just inside the present Jaffa Gate. This is the most likely location.
The Antonia Fortress, a vast military garrison built by Herod the Great, north of the temple compound and with a commanding view of the temple environs. The Omaria Elementary School, now the location of the first station of the cross, is believed to stand on part of its site.
The Palace of the Hasmoneans, built before Herod's time to house the rulers of Judea. It was probably located midway between Herod's palace and the temple, in what is today the Jewish quarter.
The first station of the cross is Jesus is condemned to death. Each station is marked with a medallion indicating the station in Roman numerals. The marker for the first station is at the Omaria Elementary School near Lions Gate. As previously mentioned, the location is believed to stand on the site of the Antonia Fortress, which is one of the potential locations for the condemnation of Jesus.
The elementary school serves 700 to 1,300 boys each year in grades kindergarten through 6. If you are planning to go on the Friday procession for the Stations of the Cross, the crowd will gather at the courtyard of this school.
The courtyard may be open Monday through Thursday and Saturday, 2:30 to 6 p.m., and Friday, 2:30 to 4 p.m. Entry is only granted with the caretaker's permission. The southern end of the courtyard offers a view overlooking the Temple Mount.
The second station is Jesus Carries His Cross. The marker for this station is near the Ecce Arch that stretches over the Via Dolorosa. The second station is marked by the words Il Statio on the wall of the Franciscan Friary.
Across the street from the Umaria Elementary School and the first station marker is the Franciscan compound containing the Chapel of the Flagellation and the Chapel of the Condemnation and the Imposition of the Cross.
The Chapel of the Flagellation enshrines the traditional location where Jesus was flogged by Roman soldiers before his journey down the Via Dolorosa to Calvary. It is notable for its stained glass windows behind the altar and on either side of the sanctuary. They show Pilate washing his hands, Jesus being scourged, and Barabbas expressing joy at his release. On the ceiling above the altar, a mosaic on the golden background depicts the crown of thorns pierced by stars.
The Chapel of the Condemnation and Imposition of the Cross marks the spot traditionally held to be where Jesus took up his cross after being sentenced to death by crucifixion. The church is topped by 5 white domes, each of them sitting on a drum containing stained glass windows depicting themes from Christ's Passion. Its floor bears a few large flagstones from Roman times. By local tradition, they are part of the stone pavement where Jesus was introduced to the crowds at the end of his trial. The paving stones at the back of the chapel are part of the pavement that extends under the Ecce Convent.
Another local tradition maintains that in the 4th century, Empress Helena found here the stairs on which Jesus walked out of the judgment hall. She ordered the removal of the stairs and sent them to Rome, where they are kept to this day at the Church of Scala Sancta.
Down the Via Dolorosa, after the Ecce Arch, and about 100 meters along, and after a sharp left turn in the Al-Yahud Road, you will reach the marker for the third station of the cross, which is Jesus Falls for the first time. The marker is on a small chapel of the Armenian Catholic Patriarchate, based in Poland. Above the entrance, a stone relief of Jesus falling with his cross marks the third station. Inside, a similar image is watched by shocked angels.
Adjacent to the third station, you will find the marker for the 4th station of the cross, where Jesus meets his mother. This marker is situated over the doorway to the courtyard of an Armenian Catholic church. Inside the crypt, there is an adoration chapel and part of a mosaic floor from the 5th century church. At the center of the mosaic is a depiction of sandals, said to mark the spot where the suffering Mary stood. However, archaeological evidence suggests another possible explanation. Images of sandals within a round frame in ancient mosaics typically indicated where to remove sandals before entering a bathhouse.
About 25 meters further along, the Via Dolorosa turns right. At the corner, the lintel over the doorway bears a Latin inscription marking the site where Simon, a visitor from present-day Libya, became involved in Jesus' passion. The fifth station of the cross is Simon of Cyrene helps Jesus carry his cross.
The Franciscan chapel here, dedicated to Simon the Cyrenian, is on the site of the Franciscans' first house in Jerusalem in 1229. One legend is that the indentation on the chapel's wall is said to be formed after Jesus leaned against it.
The Via Dolorosa now becomes a narrow, stepped street as it winds its way uphill. About 100 meters on the left, a wooden door with studded metal bands indicate the Greek Catholic Church of St. Veronica. The sixth station of the cross is Veronica wipes the face of Jesus.
According to tradition, this is the point where Veronica wiped the face of Jesus, creating the veil of Veronica. The veil is described as imprinting the face of Jesus on the cloth she used to wipe it. A cloth described as Veronica's veil is reported to have been kept in St. Peter's Basilica in Rome since the 8th century.
A Roman pillar set in the wall along the street is the oldest mark of the spot. A Latin inscription engraved in it reads, Sixth Station, Pious Veronica wiped the face of Christ with a veil.
About 75 meters further uphill, at the junction of the Via Dolorosa and Cana, two Franciscan chapels, one above the other, marks the seventh station. The seventh station marks the traditional spot where Jesus falls a second time from the weight of the cross.
Inside the lower chapel is a large stone column, part of the colonnaded Cardo Maximus, the main street of Byzantine Jerusalem, which ran from north to south.
The position of this station marks the western boundary of Jerusalem in Jesus' time. It is believed he left the city here through the Garden Gate on his way to Calvary.
Across the Sepulchre al-Zayt, and about 20 meters up a narrow street, is the eighth station, which is Jesus meets the woman of Jerusalem.
On the wall of a Greek Orthodox monastery beneath the number marker is a carved stone set at eye level. It is distinguished by a Latin cross flanked by Greek letters, which translate to Jesus Christ Conquers. By local tradition, here the women of Jerusalem bewailed and lamented Jesus' fate.
Next, retrace your steps back towards the seventh station and turn right along the Sepulchre al-Zayt. Less than 100 meters on the right is a flight of 28 wide stone steps. At the top, a left turn along a winding lane for about 80 meters leads to the Coptic Orthodox Patriarchate, where a shaft of the Roman pillar to the left of the entrance marks the ninth station, which is Jesus falls a third time.
To the left of the pillar, 3 steps lead to a terrace that is the roof of the Chapel of St. Helena in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Here, in a cluster of primitive cells, live a community of Ethiopian Orthodox monks.
The last 5 stations of the cross are associated with the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Although these stations are not specifically marked, they hold significant traditional locations within the church.
At the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, in the open area to the right of the main entrance, there is a partial column and stairs leading up to the Chapel of the Franks, a name traditionally given to the Franciscans. This was formerly an external entrance to Calvary and marks a traditional location for the 10th station, which is Jesus is stripped of his garments.
Next, moving into the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, you will take a right and go up the stairs and up Golgotha or Calvary to reach the 11th station where Jesus is nailed to the cross. This station is marked by the Catholic Chapel of the Nailing of the Cross located in the right nave on Calvary. This chapel features a 12th century medallion of the Ascension of Jesus on its ceiling, the only surviving Crusader mosaic in the church.
The 12th station, where Jesus dies on the cross, is found in the more ornate Greek Orthodox Chapel of the Crucifixion in the left nave of the Calvary. A silver disc beneath the altar marks the place where it is believed the cross of Christ stood. The limestone rock of Calvary can be touched through a round hole in the disc.
The 13th station, where Jesus' body is removed from the cross, is commemorated by a Catholic altar of Our Lady of Sorrows, depicting Mary with the sword piercing her heart, situated between the Catholic and Greek chapels. Additionally, at the entrance of the Holy Sepulchre is the stone of anointing or unction, which by tradition also holds to be where Jesus' body was prepared for burial.
The final station, the 14th station, where Jesus is laid in the tomb, is located downstairs from Golgotha and to the left under the center of the vast dome of the church. Here stands a stone monument called the Edicule, or Little House, flanked by rows of huge candles. This is the tomb of Jesus, where it is believed he lay buried for 3 days and where he rose from the dead on Easter Sunday morning.
The Church of the Holy Sepulchre in the Old City of Jerusalem is regarded by Christians as the most sacred site on earth, believed to encompass the location of Jesus Christ's crucifixion, burial, and resurrection. Within its walls lie a complex array of over 30 chapels and worship spaces, each adorned with the devotional ornamentation of various Christian traditions. Despite its mixture of architectural styles resulting from centuries of fires, earthquakes, destruction, and reconstruction, it remains a living place of worship, bustling daily with prayer, hymns, and liturgies.
Early Christians revered this site, but it was later covered by a pagan temple built by Emperor Hadrian. In 326 AD, Emperor Constantine I initiated the construction of the first church, removing the pagan temple and cutting away the tomb from the original hillside. Tradition holds that Constantine's mother, St. Helena, discovered the true cross in a cistern near Calvary.
The early church faced destruction by the Persians in 614. After being rebuilt, it was later destroyed by Al-Hakim in 1009. The church was rebuilt and later fully restored by the Crusaders in 1149, resulting in a structure that largely stands today.
Since 1757, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre has been governed by the status quo, a decree ensuring shared control among several Christian denominations. This arrangement includes the Roman Catholic, Greek Orthodox, Armenian Apostolic, Coptic, Syriac, and the Ethiopian Orthodox churches. The status quo, originally imposed by the Ottoman Turks, meticulously outlines the rights of possession and use for each community within the church. Remarkably, it also grants 2 Muslim families the exclusive right to hold the key and to open and close the church, a tradition that further dates back to 1246. This unique custodial role underscores the church's intricate and collaborative history, reflecting a legacy of religious coexistence and mutual respect.
The often uneasy relationship defined by the status quo is exemplified by a wooden ladder resting on a cornice above the main entrance, leaning against a window ledge. This ladder has been in place for so long that its origin is shrouded in mystery. It is depicted in an engraving of a church dated 1728 and was mentioned in the 1757 edict by Sultan Abdul Hamid, which established the status quo.
It is unlikely that the current ladder has survived the elements since the early 18th century. The original has been replaced at least once. In 1997, the ladder disappeared for several weeks after it was hidden behind an altar. Upon its discovery and return, a steel grate was installed over the lower parts of both windows above the entrance to prevent such incidents. In 2009, the ladder mysteriously appeared against the left window for a day.
The ladder, along with the window and cornice, is under the possession of the Armenian Orthodox. Since the latter was in place when the status quo was established in 1757, it must remain there, serving as a symbol of the delicate balance of shared custody within the church.
The main access to the church is on the south side of the building. Visitors can enter through this left-hand doorway. The right side of this doorway has been blocked up since the 12th century.
Just inside the entrance of the church is the Stone of Anointing, also known as the Stone of Unction, which tradition holds to be the place Jesus' body was prepared for burial. This tradition is only attested since the Crusader era, and the present stone was only added in the church's reconstruction.
The wall behind the stone is defined by its striking balconies and symbol-bearing red banners, depicting the insignia of the Brotherhood of the Holy Sepulchre, and is decorated with lamps. The modern mosaic along the wall depicts the anointing of Jesus' body, the descent from the cross, and the burial of Jesus.
From the main entrance turning toward your right, you will ascend a steep and curving flight of stairs. On these stairs, you are ascending the Hill of Calvary from Latin, or Golgotha from Aramaic, which means the place of the skull.
The stairs open onto a floor that is level with the area where Christ was crucified.
On the floor of Calvary are two chapels side by side, Greek Orthodox on the left, Catholic on the right. They illustrate the vast differences in liturgical decoration between the Eastern and Western churches.
The Catholic chapel of the nailing to the cross is the site where Jesus was nailed to the cross. On its ceiling is a 12th century medallion of the Ascension of Jesus, which is the only surviving Crusader mosaic in the building.
The much more ornate Greek chapel of the Crucifixion is the location where Jesus dies on the cross. A silver disc beneath the Greek altar marks the place where it is believed that the cross stood. The limestone rock of Calvary may be touched through a round hole in the disc. On the right, under glass can be seen a fissure in the rock. Some believe this was caused by an earthquake at the time Christ died. Others suggest that the rock of Calvary was left standing by quarrymen because it was cracked.
Between the two chapels, a Catholic altar of Our Lady of Sorrows commemorates the event where Jesus is taken down from the cross.
Another flight of stairs at the left rear of the Greek chapel leads back to the ground floor.
Continuing away from Calvary, the rotunda of the church opens up on the right, surrounded by massive pillars and surmounted by a huge dome. Its outer walls date back to the Emperor Constantine's original basilica built in the 4th century. The dome is decorated with a starburst of tongues of light, with 12 rays representing the apostles.
In the center is a stone aedicule with its entrance flanked by rows of huge candles. This is believed to be the location of the tomb of Christ.
This stone monument encloses the tomb, or sepulchre, where it is believed Jesus lay buried for 3 days and where he rose from the dead. Studies late in the 20th century show that the present aedicule contains the remains of 3 previous structures, each encasing the previous one, much like a set of Russian dolls.
At busy times, Greek Orthodox priests control admission to the tomb. Inside, there are 2 chambers. In the outer one, known as the Chapel of the Angel, stands a pedestal containing what is believed to be a piece of the rolling stone used to close the tomb.
A very low doorway leads to the tomb chamber, lined with marble and hung with holy pictures. On the right, a marble slab covers the rock bench on which the body of Jesus lay. It is the slab which is venerated by pilgrims.
Located behind the aedicule is the Jacobite chapel, which is dedicated to Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus, who were involved in Jesus' burial. The Syrian Orthodox community, known as the Jacobites, holds regular services here. The chapel's ancient atmosphere reflects early Christian traditions. In this chapel is an entrance to a room with 2 niches of a 1st century tomb. Since Jews always buried their dead outside the city, this proves that the Holy Sepulchre site was outside the city walls at the time of the crucifixion. There is a tradition that Joseph of Arimathea was buried here after he had given his original tomb for Jesus to be buried in.
Returning to the rotunda, the area to the left, on the north side of the church, is overseen by Catholics. There is an altar dedicated to Saint Mary Magdalene. Then double bronze doors to your left lead to the Franciscan Chapel of the Apparition. It commemorates the ancient tradition that Jesus appeared to his mother after his resurrection. In this chapel is a column of stone believed by many to be part of the pillar to which Jesus was tied as he was whipped by Roman soldiers.
Outside of the chapel, turning left, behind the altar dedicated to Mary Magdalene, are the 7 arches of the Virgin. The name commemorates a belief that Mary walked this path when she visited her son's tomb. This area also contains pillars and other materials from previous constructions of the church.
Further down is the Greek Orthodox Chapel of the Prison of Christ, where it is alleged that Jesus was held before the crucifixion.
Further around the semicircular aisle are 2 chapels on the left. The first is the Greek Chapel of St. Longinus. It is dedicated to the Roman soldier who pierced Jesus' side with a spear and then accepted him as the Son of God.
Further along is the Armenian Chapel of the Division of the Raiment, recalling the Roman soldiers that divided Christ's clothes among them.
Next, on the left, is a stairwell, its walls inscribed with hundreds of crosses left by pilgrims in past centuries. The 29 steps descend to the underground Armenian Chapel of St. Helena. This was the crypt of the Emperor Constantine's 4th century basilica and is therefore the oldest complete part of the entire building. During restoration works around 1973 to 1978, excavators discovered a 2nd century drawing of a Roman ship. A large decorative floral mosaic was made in the 20th century. Part of it depicts churches in historical Armenia.
From the right of the chapel, another 22 steps leads to the Franciscan Chapel of the Finding of the Cross. This rough-walled area has been built within a part of the ancient quarry, apparently later converted into a cistern for water storage.
Here, according to tradition, Saint Helena, Constantine's mother, discovered the true cross and other instruments of the Passion and Crucifixion. A statue behind the altar shows her holding the cross.
Remnants of 12th century frescoes are displayed behind glass walls.
Between these glass walls lies a floor mosaic, marking the spot where tradition holds that a piece of Jesus' cross was discovered. After ascending all the steps to the ground floor again, immediately on the left is the Greek chapel of the Derision. It commemorates the mocking of Jesus by the Roman soldiers. Under the altar is a fragment of a column, said to be one Jesus sat on when the crown of thorns was placed on his head. This solemn space evokes reflection on the humiliation and suffering endured by Jesus.
Further along on the left, a glass screen protrudes slightly into the aisle. Through it can be seen the natural rock of Calvary. Next to it is a small area called the Chapel or the Cave of Adam. The Cave of Adam is one of the oldest chapels in the vast Sepulchre Church and is located directly beneath the site of the crucifixion. Jewish tradition holds that Adam's skull was buried here. According to Exodus, Noah passed the skull to his son Shem, and then to Melchizedek, the priest-king of Jerusalem, who buried Adam's remains at the foot of Golgotha.
From this chapel, a door leads to the Greek treasury, holding relics, including one of the true cross. It should be noted that this area may be closed to visitors. Heading back out through the Chapel of Adam, we are going back towards the Edicule, and toward the center of the church to the Catholicon.
The Central Greek Orthodox Chapel serves as the central worship space for the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate of Jerusalem. It features a grand dome with mosaics and icons. The omphalos, believed to be the navel of the world, symbolizes the spiritual center for Orthodox Christians. Daily liturgies and prayers are held by the Greek Orthodox community. The next chapels we'll visit are accessible through the south entrance courtyard by a doorway near the Church of the Franks, a traditional location of the 10th Station of the Cross. As you enter, you'll first encounter the Chapel of St. Michael, also known as the Archangel Michael. To the left, a staircase leads to the second chapel, the Chapel of the Four Living Creatures. One of the notable features here is an illustration of the Queen of Sheba visiting King Solomon, which is mentioned in the Old Testament of the Bible. To the left of this chapel is an exit that leads to the Deir es-Sultan, or the Sultan's Monastery, which is situated on the roof of the Chapel of St. Helena. For reference, this is the dome of the chapel and how it appears from the interior.
This rooftop courtyard is adjacent to the 9th Station of the Cross. It's important to note that at the time of this video's publication, this area, along with the two aforementioned chapels, is the subject of a dispute between the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church and the Coptic Orthodox Church of Alexandria.
If you're interested in attending a service within the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, be sure to get confirmation on the spoken language, location within the church, and the times for the services. As an example, for Catholics, this was the schedule when we visited. If attending a Mass within the tomb is important to you, and the schedule remains the same, you should plan to arrive earlier than the 6 a.m. start time in the summer or the 5 a.m. start time in the winter, because the space is very limited. For the service that we attended, it was a total of 11 people, including the priest.
The next site that will be discussed is the cenacle. The cenacle is located on the upper floor of a 2-story building south of the Zion Gate in Jerusalem's Old City. This significant room on Mount Zion is associated with two major events in early Christianity: the Last Supper and Pentecost.
The Last Supper was the meal that Jesus shared with his apostles the night before his crucifixion, during which he instituted the sacrament of the Eucharist. Pentecost commemorates the descent of the Holy Spirit upon the apostles, after which they began spreading the message of Jesus. This event is considered the birthday of the Christian Church by several Christian denominations.
The cenacle's identification as the upper room mentioned in the Gospels of Mark and Luke is not universally accepted. However, archaeological research suggests that it was on top of a church synagogue constructed by the first century Jewish Christian community of Jerusalem. Another contender for the upper room is the Monastery of St. Mark the Evangelist and the Virgin Mary, which is a Syriac Orthodox monastery in the Armenian quarter of the Old City of Jerusalem. Above the cenacle is the minaret of a Muslim mosque, and immediately below it is the Jewish shrine revered as the tomb of King David. Although religious authorities, archaeologists, and historians generally do not believe the site to be the actual resting place of King David.
The present Gothic arched cenacle is a restoration of a 12th century Crusader chapel, part of the Church of Our Lady of Mount Zion. In 1335, the Franciscans acquired the site through the efforts of King Robert and Queen Sansia of Naples. In the 16th century, after the Turks captured Jerusalem, the room was converted into a mosque in memory of the prophet David. Its mihrab, a niche indicating the direction of Mecca, and stained glass windows with Arabic inscriptions remain to this day.
One of the sanctified sites for Jews on Mount Zion is the tomb of King David, the celebrated Old Testament warrior king of Israel, traditionally credited with composing many of the Psalms.
Despite the Old Testament indicating David was buried elsewhere, this site, directly beneath the cenacle where Christians commemorate the Last Supper, remains a pilgrimage destination for Jews, Muslims, and Christians.
David's death is recorded in the Book of Kings as being buried in the city of David. Excavations since have failed to identify his tomb. Another tradition places his burial in Bethlehem, though no tomb has been found there either.
The present tomb of David, built by Christian crusaders, features a large stone cenotaph. 3 of the room's 4 walls are older, likely from a 1st century synagogue church known as the Church of the Apostles or Church of Zion. This presumed Jewish Christian congregation was considered distinct from the main Gentile congregation, which had its home at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
Visiting the Tomb of David is a meaningful experience, and like other religious sites, such as the Western Wall, it's essential to approach it with respect for the local customs. Modest attire is required, with head coverings being expected. In particular, men can find complimentary kippahs at the entrance. The site's entrance hall doubles as a synagogue, and it's traditionally believed to be the place where Christ washed the feet of his disciples. The room containing the cenotaph is divided by gender, with a niche behind it where visitors often leave prayers, sometimes with the help of a chair to reach the space. Depending on the time of your visit, the atmosphere can range from serene and peaceful to bustling and lively.
Christian tradition places the birth of John the Baptist in the picturesque village of Ein Kerem, about 7.5 kilometers southwest of Jerusalem. Luke's Gospel recounts the circumstances of John's birth. The angel Gabriel appeared to the elderly priest Zechariah while he was serving in the temple and told him that his wife Elizabeth would bear a son. Zechariah was skeptical and was struck mute, remaining so until John was born. Meanwhile, Gabriel appeared to the Virgin Mary in Nazareth, telling her that she was to become the mother of Jesus. As proof, he revealed that Mary's elderly cousin Elizabeth was already 6 months pregnant. Mary then visited Elizabeth in Ein Kerem, where Elizabeth was staying in seclusion for 5 months.
The 2 main sites in the Judean town of Ein Kerem are linked to the understanding that Zechariah and Elizabeth had 2 houses. Their usual residence was in the valley, while a cooler summer house on the hillside provided relief from the heat and humidity. The summer house is believed to be where pregnant Elizabeth remained in seclusion for 5 months, and where Mary visited her. The house in the valley is where John the Baptist was born, and where Zechariah regained his speech after writing that the baby's name was to be John.
Since we were on a private tour with a vehicle, we were able to reach the Church of St. John the Baptist in Ein Kerem in about 20 minutes from the Old City of Jerusalem.
The Church of St. John the Baptist is traditionally associated with the house of Zechariah and Elizabeth, where John the Baptist was born. This church combines remnants from various periods, including a Byzantine church and a Crusader church. The present structure, built by the Franciscans with the help of the Spanish monarchy, was designed by the architect Antonio Barluzzi.
The high altar is dedicated to St. John. To the right is Elizabeth's altar, and to the left, steps lead down to the natural grotto identified as John's birthplace and believed to be part of his parents' home.
If the translation of the Latin inscription sounds familiar, it is from Zechariah's Song of Thanksgiving, which can also be found on ceramic tile plates outside and translated into 24 different languages.
A chapel beneath the porch contains 2 tombs, with an inscription in a mosaic panel that reads in Greek, "Hail Martyrs of God," though the identity of these martyrs remains unknown.
About a 7-minute walk south from the church is a freshwater spring known as Mary's Spring, or the Fountain of the Virgin. Tradition has it that Mary quenched her thirst from the spring before ascending the hill to meet Elizabeth. However, do not try to drink the water in the event that it is contaminated.
The spring gives the village its name, from the Arabic Ain, meaning spring, and Kerem, meaning vineyard or orchard. About another 5-minute walk from the spring, and you will reach the Church of the Visitation.
The Church of the Visitation is traditionally associated with the summer house of Zechariah and Elizabeth, and the location of Mary's visitation. Mary's visit to Elizabeth, depicted in a mosaic on the facade, is commemorated in this 2-tiered church on a slope of a hill in south of Ein Kerem.
Completed in 1955 and designed by Antonio Barluzzi, the Church of the Visitation is renowned for its artistic beauty. Ceramic plaques on the wall opposite the church display Mary's Canticle of Praise, the Magnificat, in about 50 languages.
In the lower chapel, a vaulted passage leads to an old well. According to ancient tradition, a spring joyfully burst out of the rock here when Mary greeted Elizabeth. It may have also been a spring used by Elizabeth and Zechariah. A huge stone set in a niche, known as the Stone of Hiding, is said to have opened to provide a hiding place for the baby John during Herod's massacre of the innocents, an event depicted on a painting on the wall.
The walls of the upper church are adorned with beautiful frescoes. Behind the altar, a fresco depicts Mary approaching through Judea, with the Franciscans presenting her with a model of the church, and the Catholic Patriarch of Jerusalem in the time in attendance. As an added bonus, if you look closely at one of the frescoes to the right of the altar, you may recognize one of the faces in the crowd as that of Mr. Antonio Barluzzi, our favorite architect.
After the sights in Ein Kerem, our guide drove us back to the Mount of Olives to visit a few more noteworthy religious sites and to catch an amazing sunset over the skyline of the Old City.
At the Church of the Pater Noster on the Mount of Olives, Christians commemorate Christ teaching the Lord's Prayer to his disciples. A long tradition holds that Jesus taught the Lord's Prayer, or Our Father, in the cave beneath the church. The cave, near the summit of the mount, would have provided a secluded and sheltered place for small groups to gather. The earliest reference to Jesus' teaching in the cave dates back to the 2nd century, though it does not specifically mention the Lord's Prayer.
In 330 AD, Emperor Constantine built a 3-level church on this site to commemorate the Ascension of Christ. This historic church was known simply as Eleona, from the Greek word meaning of olives. When the Crusaders built a church on this site in the 12th century, they named it Pater Noster, Latin for Our Father. Pilgrims of the time reported seeing the prayer inscribed in Hebrew and Greek on marble plaques. The excavations have uncovered a Latin version as well.
The present church and its cloister were completed in 1874 by Aurélie de Bossy, the Princess de la Tour d'Auvergne, who had a particular devotion to the Lord's Prayer. She erected translations of the prayer in 39 different languages and later added a convent for the Carmelite sisters. Although she was keenly interested in finding the cave, she never discovered it, but she accurately predicted its location. Excavations by archaeologists in 1911 confirmed her prediction, though the cave was partly collapsed when found.
The princess died in Florence in 1889, but her last wish was for her remains to rest in the Pater Noster Church, in a tomb she had prepared. Her wish was fulfilled in 1957 with the life-size effigy on top of her sarcophagus.
The Pater Noster Church is a part reconstruction of Constantine's Eleona Church. Built on the same dimensions, it provides a good idea of what the original Byzantine basilica looked like. The church and its vaulted cloister feature colorful ceramic plaques inscribed with translations of the Lord's Prayer in 140 languages.
As a fun fact, I come from a small island of Guam where they speak Chamorro. To my surprise, I found the Lord's Prayer inscribed with the translation in Chamorro. So we are in the Pater Noster Church, where it is believed that Jesus taught the disciples to pray the Our Father. And around the church you'll see that they have it in different languages. And right next to the altar, I found this.
Right across from the Pater Noster Church is the Dome or Chapel of Ascension, which commemorates a traditional location for the ascension of Jesus.
One tradition attributes the building of the first church to a wealthy Roman woman, a member of the imperial family in 380 AD. Another tradition attributes the first Ascension Church to Empress Helena, who ordered the construction of the church after a religious pilgrimage to the Holy Land. This first church was called Imbomon, or Greek for on the hill.
The first church was described as a rotunda, open to the sky and surrounded by circular porticos and arches, which featured a central rock on its stone floor. It was believed that Jesus' final footprints could be seen in the dust on this rock.
By 614, Persian armies had destroyed the church along with other nearby religious structures. However, by 670 the church had been rebuilt, and it was still reported that the footprints could be seen in the dust on its floor.
In the late 7th century, the church was rebuilt again. A Frankish bishop and pilgrim described the church in about 680 as a round building open to the sky with 3 porticos entered from the south. 8 lamps shone brightly at night through the windows facing Jerusalem. Inside was a central edicule containing the footprints of Christ, plainly and clearly impressed in the dust inside a railing.
In the 12th century, the Crusaders rebuilt an octagonal chapel within a fortified monastery. This strategic position on the crest of the Mount of Olives allowed the Crusaders to control the road between Jericho and Jerusalem. The footprints, now reported to be carved into the rock, were still venerated.
The last church on the site was captured by the Muslim Sultan Saladin when he defeated the Crusaders in 1187. Since Muslims also believe in the ascension of Jesus, the site was converted into a mosque.
Today, all that remains at the site is a small, plain, and unadorned octagonal structure. This structure still contains what has traditionally been regarded as the last impression of Jesus' right foot on earth before he ascended into heaven. The other part of the rock, which contains the left footprint, was placed behind the pulpit in the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount.
A 10-minute walk downhill from the Church of Pater Noster, or the Church of the Ascension, brings you to the Church of Dominus Flevit, which is Latin for the Lord wept. This little teardrop-shaped church commemorates the event as described in the Gospel, where Jesus wept over the future fate of Jerusalem. Looking down on the city, Jesus wept as he prophesied its future destruction. Within 40 years, in 70 AD, his prophecy was fulfilled. Roman legions besieged Jerusalem, and after 6 months of fighting, they burned the temple and leveled the city.
From the Church of Dominus Flevit, visitors can enjoy a panoramic view that makes it easy to imagine the scene as Christ looked down on the city. Where the Dome of the Rock stands today, the temple once stood. Designed by Italian architect Antonio Barluzzi, the church's teardrop shape symbolizes Christ's grief. A mosaic of a hen gathering her chicks under her wings, located at the foot of the altar, recalls a previous statement made by Jesus. Behind the altar, a picture window offers a much photographed view overlooking the city, focusing on the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
Built in 1955, the Church of Dominus Flevit stands on the ruins of a 5th century Byzantine church dedicated to St. Anna in an area with tombs dating back to 1600 BC. The church incorporates remains of ancient Byzantine structure, including a beautiful mosaic floor from the 5th to 6th century that can be seen behind the entrance. This mosaic, illustrating various fruits within geometric patterns, includes a Greek inscription naming Simeon as the person who laid out the floor.
For an unforgettable experience, time your visit close to closing to witness the stunning sunset view from the church, with the colors of the changing sky over the skyline of the old city of Jerusalem.
The Cardo Maximus, named for its central role in Roman and Byzantine cities, served as the main north-south thoroughfare in Jerusalem. Cardo, meaning heart, aptly describes the road that ran through the city's core. Around 130 AD, Emperor Hadrian rebuilt Jerusalem, incorporating a cardo into the city's design. This paved 22.5-meter wide street extended southward from the Damascus Gate.
During the Byzantine era in the 6th century AD, Emperor Justinian extended the cardo further south, reaching the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and the Zion Gate. The street likely hosted ceremonial processions from the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Throughout its length, the cardo is lined with colonnades, covered walkways, and a shaded arcade.
Today, visitors to the Old City of Jerusalem can explore the Jewish quarter and view the excavated southern section of the cardo. The site reveals tall, thick columns, ornate capitals, and the arcade where merchants once stood, along with the large flagstones that paved the road. Approximately 500 years after the original cardo was constructed, the Crusaders built a bazaar along part of it. These Crusader-era shops have been restored and now serve their original purpose once again.
The shopping area of the cardo features a beautifully vaulted ceiling, with modern stores housed in the ancient Crusader shops. Along the pathways, several wells with glass covers display the ancient layers of the city beneath. A reconstructed section showcases some of the original flooring and columns, accompanied by a mural that offers a glimpse into the area's historical grandeur. Okay, right now we are on the Cardo, which was the north-south street in Jerusalem. Right below us, these are the original stones from that time. And to get an idea of what the street would have looked like, there's a painting on that wall opposite us. Next, we will discuss the Western Wall Tunnel tours, but before we get into the details, here is some important information. The tours are approximately 1 hour, and they start about every 20 minutes. It should be noted that the tours have different hours of operation. Also, in case you are wondering about prices, this handy ticket price chart can give you a good idea. As always, ticket prices and hours of operation are subject to change, so it's always recommended to double check prior to your visit.
We highly recommend booking a tour of the Western Wall tunnels where you can choose between two distinct experiences, the Great Stone Route or the Great Bridge Route.
The Western Wall, or Kotel, is a significant remnant of the Second Temple period, which was destroyed about 2,000 years ago. While the wall originally stretched nearly half a kilometer, only 70 meters are visible today at the Western Wall Plaza. These tours offer a rare chance to explore the hidden sections of the wall and touch the original stones that hold so much history.
Under the Great Stone Route, visitors to the Western Wall tunnels can delve into the ancient spaces beneath the Old City, uncovering remarkable archaeological finds such as large stone vaults and arches, cisterns, and an ancient water aqueduct trench ending at the Strothian Pool.
The more recently introduced Great Bridge Route takes visitors even deeper beneath the Old City to see the Great Bridge that once led to the Temple Mount. This tour features various rooms and halls that served people of that era, showcasing exciting new discoveries and offering a first look at newly exposed sections of the Western Wall.
For our tour, we chose the Great Bridge Route. As you embark on this adventure, the guide leads you through tunnels revealing hidden segments of the Western Wall. Along the way, presentations and detailed explanations with pictures or models help you to envision life during the Second Temple period, making it feel as though you're being transported back in time. You even have the opportunity to touch the original stones, imagining the countless lives that have passed by these ancient walls.
The tour's highlight is the descent to the Great Bridge, an impressive structure that once connected to the Temple Mount.
Standing stones from erosion, from destruction. These stones were not seen by human eyes for at least 17 centuries. They were exposed less than 10 years ago. But to excavate here was quite challenging. This is what Avi Solomon, the chief excavator of this area, tells, because
the recently exposed sections of the Western Wall showcase incredible craftsmanship and architectural prowess. Walking through ancient halls and rooms that served the people of that era, you can't help but feel a sense of wonder. You'll see ornate capitals on columns that once served as beautiful fountains for ritual baths, which were enhanced by a video projection illustrating their former glory.
560 millimeters, less than 2 feet. 25 rainy days more or less, everything in the winter, long, hot, dry summer. They had to build an aqueduct to supply fresh water to the temple, and the builder of this house inserts lead pipes in the capitals in order to divert a part of the water and to have here the splash of water.
There is a theory that Herod built this area as a VIP section for friends to relax and dine before proceeding to the temple.
At the end of the tour, you'll visit a sanctuary space that opens to the public for celebrations and milestone occasions, offering a stunning setting for such events. A pomegranate-shaped golden sphere engraved with the words of the Song of Songs, full of symbolic meaning, particularly stands out. The pomegranate seeds, for example, symbolize the sacred obligations of the Torah.
As the tour concludes, you'll emerge with a profound appreciation for the history and significance of the Western Wall. The Great Bridge route is more than just a tour, it's a journey through time, offering an unforgettable experience that brings the ancient world of Jerusalem to life.
The Garden Tomb is described as a possible location for the crucifixion, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. Its location is about a 7-minute walk north from the Damascus Gate of the Old City of Jerusalem. Located down an alley off Nablus Road, the Garden Tomb features an open tomb carved into a rock face near a limestone cliff with skull-like erosion. This site is particularly favored by Protestant pilgrims who prefer its tranquility to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in the Old City. Though once formally supported by the Anglican Church, its authenticity is questioned by scholars.
The Garden Tomb's connection to Golgotha, or the place of the skull, was first proposed in 1842 by German scholar Otto Thenius. He suggested that the skull-faced cliff was Golgotha, where Jesus was crucified as described in John's Gospel. The adjacent rock-hewn tomb that was discovered in 1867 and later advocated by British Army officer Major General Charles Gordon, who identified the cliff as Golgotha based on a dream. For years, the site was known as Gordon's Calvary.
Early Christian commentators believed the hill was called Golgotha due to its association with executions where criminals' skulls and bones lay scattered. The Gospels do not specify Golgotha's location, but indicate it was outside the city and by a well-traveled road, and that Jesus was buried in a new rock-hewn tomb in a nearby garden.
While the Garden Tomb is outside the old city walls, all tombs in the area date from the 7th to 9th centuries BC, which are earlier than Jesus' time. In addition, the reuse of the tombs would contradict the biblical account of a new tomb made for Jesus by Joseph of Arimathea. Conversely, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, built where early Christians believed Jesus died, was buried, and resurrected, dates back to the appropriate period.
Despite these historical uncertainties, the Garden Tomb remains a significant Christian pilgrimage site, drawing hundreds of thousands of visitors annually. It's a peaceful setting that undoubtedly encourages meditation and prayer. A brief 10-minute walk from Zion Gate brings you to the striking church of St. Peter in Gallicantu, a site commemorating the Apostle Peter's triple denial of Jesus, his immediate repentance, and subsequent reconciliation with Christ after the resurrection. Located on the eastern slope of Mount Zion, the church's rooftop features a golden rooster atop a black cross, symbolizing Christ's prophecy that Peter would deny him 3 times before the cock crows. The term Gallicantu means cockcrow in Latin. It's noteworthy that Peter's denial is documented in all 4 Gospels.
Believed to be built on the site of the high priest Caiaphas's house, the church stands over the ruins of a Byzantine basilica. Below the church is a dungeon thought to have held Jesus the night of his arrest.
The Church of St. Peter in Gallicantu is built on 4 levels: the upper church, middle church, guard room, and dungeon. Its design blends contemporary and ancient art. The courtyard features a statue depicting Peter's denial, complete with a rooster, a woman questioning Peter, and a Roman soldier.
Inside the church, 2 Byzantine-era mosaics uncovered during the excavation lightly date back to the 5th century Byzantine church. The ceiling centerpiece is a large, colorful cross-shaped window. 3 significant mosaics adorn the walls: Jesus being questioned in Caiaphas's house, the Last Supper, and Peter in papal attire.
The middle church downstairs displays icons above the altars depicting Peter's denial, repentance, and reconciliation with Jesus on the shore of the Sea of Galilee after the resurrection.
The lower levels contain what are believed to be a guard room and prisoner's cell, both carved from bedrock. The guard room features wall fixtures for attaching prisoners' chains and holes in the stone pillars for securing prisoners during floggings. Bowls in the floor likely contain salt and vinegar to aggravate pain or disinfect wounds. Although Jesus was flogged by Romans, his disciples, including Peter, were likely flogged here by the Jewish council for preaching in Jesus' name after the resurrection.
The prison cell, known as Christ's prison, offers insight into where Jesus might have been held the night before his crucifixion. Accessed only through a shaft from above, prisoners would have been lowered and raised by a rope harness, as depicted in a mosaic outside the church.
Pilgrims' reports dating back to 333 AD suggest that this site was Caiaphas's house, though some archaeologists propose the high priest's house was at the Armenian Orthodox Church of the House of Caiaphas on Mount Zion, near Dormition Abbey.
Excavations at St. Peter in Gallicantu revealed a water cistern, corn mill, storage chambers, and servants' quarters.
Nearby, an ancient stepped street descended from Mount Zion to the Kidron Valley. These steps were likely used by Jesus and his disciples on the night of his arrest as they traveled from the Last Supper to Gethsemane. Even if Caiaphas's house was further up Mount Zion, Jesus would have been brought by this route under guard to the high priest's house.
The Church of St. Peter in Gallicantu illustrates the tumultuous history of religious sites in the Holy Land. A major church built here in 457 was damaged in 529 during the Samaritan Revolt and destroyed in 614 by the Persians. It was rebuilt around 628, destroyed in 1009 by Caliph Hakim, rebuilt in 1100 by the Crusaders, and destroyed again in 1219 by the Turks. A chapel built around 1300 was also destroyed, and the present church was completed in 1932.
Jerusalem, a city of deep historical and spiritual significance, holds countless treasures for the avid traveler and history enthusiast. Among its most captivating sites is the City of David National Park, an archaeological wonderland that offers a glimpse into the historic heart of Jerusalem.
Conveniently located just a 2 to 4 minute walk from the Dung Gate of the Old City of Jerusalem, the City of David National Park could easily be added to an itinerary that includes sites from the Jewish Quarter or the Western Wall.
The original inhabitants of Jerusalem lived not on the site of today's Old City, but on a narrow ridge descending from the present Temple Mount.
This is where King David captured the fortress of the Jebusites, a Canaanite tribe, around 1000 BC. On this slender spur, about 12 acres, David established his capital, which featured natural defenses from the Hinnom Valley to the south, the Kidron Valley to the east, and the Tyropoeon Valley to the west. Fresh water was supplied by the Gihon Spring, gushing at the site's foot. Besides David and his son Solomon, this would have been the stomping grounds for King Hezekiah, King Josiah, and the prophets Isaiah and Jeremiah.
Begin your journey at the City of David Visitor Center. Here, a 3D video presentation vividly brings biblical history to life and sets the stage for the incredible discoveries that lie ahead. The hall itself is designed to resemble public and royal halls from ancient times, immersing you in the ambiance of the era.
Next, you will encounter the ruins of a large stone structure believed to be the remains of David's palace. Clay impressions used for sealing documents belonging to high-ranking officials from King Zedekiah's court, the last king of Judah, were found near the structure, suggesting it served as the royal administration of Judah until the Babylonian destruction.
Moving deeper into the park, you'll arrive at Area G, a steep slope rich in biblical-era artifacts. Here you can see the supporting walls of what is believed to be King David's palace. The surrounding area close to the palace was likely inhabited by royal officials or wealthier people. One noteworthy discovery is a home with its own private bathroom, complete with an ancient toilet.
As you continue along the path, you will reach the entrance to the water system known as Warren's Shaft, named after the British explorer who discovered it.
Nearby is the Gihon Spring, Jerusalem's original water source and one of the largest springs in the region.
Eventually, you'll get to the point where you will either take the Canaanite Tunnel, a dry path that'll take a brief couple of minutes to walk through, or Hezekiah's Tunnel, the wet path, where the water could get up to 2 feet deep, which could take anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes, depending on how busy it is.
The Canaanites originally used the tunnel to channel the waters of the Gihon Spring to a storage pool south of the city. If you take the Canaanite Tunnel, you will emerge outside, where you can view the ancient walls of Jerusalem. These walls, compared to the old city, are significantly older. Eventually, this path converges with the point of exit from Hezekiah's Tunnel, offering a seamless continuation of your journey through history.
For many, one of the highlights of the City of David National Park is Hezekiah's Tunnel. Built in the 8th century BC, this 533-meter tunnel is a testament to ancient engineering prowess. King Hezekiah commissioned the tunnel to divert water from Gihon Spring into the city, preparing Jerusalem for an Assyrian siege.
The tunnel winds through solid rock, with water often reaching knee-high levels. A reliable flashlight is essential, and be prepared to get wet. The journey through the tunnel, with its narrow passages and visible chisel marks, is a tangible connection to the past.
Emerging from Hezekiah's Tunnel, you'll find yourself at the Pool of Siloam. This large pool, discovered in 2004, played a significant role in the daily and religious life of ancient Jerusalem. It served as a ritual bath for Jewish pilgrims in the 1st century and is famously mentioned in the New Testament, where Jesus healed a man born blind. Coins found in the cement provide archaeological evidence that the pool was used in Jesus' time.
The pool's extensive stone steps, which date back to the 1st century BC, invite you to sit and reflect on the myriad of pilgrims who once gathered here. From the Pool of Siloam, visitors can walk a section of the Herodian Street, now also below ground level, that hundreds of thousands of Jews use 3 times a year to ascend to the temple during pilgrim feasts.
A visit to the City of David National Park is more than a tour. It's a journey through history, culture, and faith. The park not only showcases the remarkable engineering and urban planning of ancient Jerusalem, but also connects you to the stories and events that have shaped this timeless city. Whether you're walking through the tunnels, contemplating at the Pool of Siloam, or exploring the ruins of the potential palace of King David, the City of David offers an unforgettable glimpse into the history of Jerusalem. To wrap up our time in Israel, we decided to book a couple of tours to visit a few areas outside the city of Jerusalem. After doing some research, we decided to book with Abraham Tours. Back when these tours were available in 2023, we ended up booking the Best of the West Bank tour and the Hebron Dual Narrative tour.
For both tours, the starting point was at the Abraham Hostel lobby at Davidka Square. For the Best of the West Bank tour, the itinerary was a scheduled pickup at 7:30 a.m. The first stop was Ramah, followed by a tour of Jericho, then a visit to the Qaser Al-Yahud baptismal site, with lunch approximately at 1 p.m., then on to a tour of Bethlehem, then a return to Jerusalem around 6 p.m. It should be noted that sites may vary depending on crowds and religious holidays, and the order of visiting sites or cities and locations may vary as well. Also, be sure to bring your passport and wear modest clothing due to the requirements at certain holy sites. Specifically, knees and arms should be covered.
For our specific tour, the first stop was the city of Ramallah. This was a roughly 35-minute drive north of Jerusalem. This stop is about getting a glimpse into the lives of Palestinians. During our visit to a commercial area in the Al-Manar Square, our guide gave us information about what a typical day would be like for a Palestinian. Along the way, there was also a stop made for traditional Arabic coffee.
Next, we visited Jericho, the oldest continuously inhabited city in the world. Remarkably, Jericho is also the lowest city in the world, situated at 258 meters or 846 feet below sea level. Jericho's rich history, stretching back over 10,000 years, is a treasure trove for history enthusiasts. Specifically, we visited ancient Jericho, or Tel Jericho, an archaeological site and UNESCO World Heritage Site that consists of the oldest fortified city in the world. This area was first identified as the site of ancient Jericho by British officer Charles Warren, who also discovered the tunnel in the City of David.
Before exploring the ruins, we watched a brief video detailing the fascinating history of Tel Jericho, which enhanced our appreciation of the site. As we wandered through the ancient ruins, we were struck by the sheer antiquity of the place. The remains of ancient walls and towers stood as silent witnesses to the myriad of civilizations that thrived here. Among the highlights is the Tower of Jericho, a 28-foot tall stone structure that is among the earliest stone monuments of mankind. Another highlight is the revetment wall, dating back to the Middle Bronze Age and thought to have been destroyed around 1400 BC, which aligns with the biblical story of Joshua bringing down the walls of Jericho. However, there is still some debate about the direct connection between these archaeological findings and biblical events.
From the site of Tel Jericho, we could see the Mount of Temptation, an imposing mountain rising dramatically to the northwest. This biblical landmark is traditionally regarded as the mountain where Jesus was tempted by the devil during his 40-day fast, as recounted in the Gospel of Matthew. The Mount of Temptation is home to the Monastery of the Temptation, a Greek Orthodox monastery clinging to its cliffs. The journey to the monastery could be either a challenging 30-minute hike or a 5-minute cable car ride. It should be noted that you can take the cable car ride from this ancient site.
Also, nearby was the Licious Spring, also known as the Prophet's Fountain. This freshwater spring, located near the archaeological mound of Tel Jericho, has been a vital source of water for the region for thousands of years. According to biblical tradition, the prophet Elisha purified the waters of this spring, making them fit for drinking and irrigation. The spring continues to produce plenty of water, maintaining Jericho's status as an oasis in the harsh desert environment north of the Dead Sea.
The next stop on our tour of the West Bank was the Qaser Al-Yahud baptism site, which was about a 35-minute drive from Jericho.
Caesarea Al-Yahud is an Arabic name meaning citadel or castle of the Jews, which was a name given to the nearby castle-like monastery of St. John the Baptist. But the name is also being used for the West Bank section of the baptism site itself. The Jordanian side of the river uses the names Al-Makdas, meaning immersion or baptism, or Bethany beyond the Jordan and baptismal site.
Revered as a traditional location where John the Baptist baptized Jesus on the Jordan River, Qaser Al-Yahud holds profound significance for Christians worldwide. It has also been traditionally identified as one of the possible points through which the Israelites have crossed the Jordan River as they reached the Promised Land, and finally as the site where the prophet Elijah ascended to heaven.
As we approached, the serene landscape and the tranquil flow of the Jordan River created a sense of reverence and peace.
The site is well maintained with facilities that cater to pilgrims and tourists alike. Walking down to the river's edge, it is easy to feel a connection with the biblical history that unfolded here. Many visitors were engaged in religious rituals, immersing themselves in the same waters where, according to tradition, Jesus was baptized. The sense of spirituality in history is palpable, making Caesarea Al-Yahud a highlight for anyone interested in the religious heritage of the Holy Land.
From here, about an hour away, we visited Bethlehem. Specifically, we made a stop at the Church of Nativity.
Entering the Church of Nativity in Bethlehem is an experience that requires reverence, starting with the act of stooping low. The only doorway into the fortress-like front wall, known as the Door of Humility, stands just 1.2 meters or 3.9 feet high. This entrance was lowered during the Ottoman period to prevent people from riding into the church on horseback, making it fitting for visitors to bow as they enter the place where it is believed that God humbled himself to become man.
Today's basilica, the oldest complete church in the Christian world, was built by Emperor Justinian in the 6th century. It replaced the original church of Constantine the Great, constructed over the cave venerated as Christ's birthplace and dedicated in 339 AD. Before Constantine, the Romans attempted to erase the memory of the cave by planting a grove dedicated to the pagan god Adonis and establishing his cult there.
Though the Gospels do not specify that Jesus was born in a cave, written references to the Nativity cave date back to 160 AD. When the original Church of Nativity was built, the cave was enlarged to accommodate pilgrims.
In 614, Persians invaded and destroyed many churches, but they spared the Church of the Nativity. A legend attributes this to their commander being moved by a mosaic depicting the 3 wise men in Persian dress. In any case, this church being spared is one of the reasons why it is considered the oldest complete church in the Christian world.
Today, the Church of the Nativity is cool and wide open, with its interior devoid of seating, allowing visitors to fully appreciate the atmosphere. The restored 12th century wall mosaics depicting saints, angels, and church councils have regained their original luster. Trapdoors in the floor reveal glimpses of the 4th century mosaic floor from Constantine's Basilica, rediscovered in 1934. These intricate mosaics featuring detailed geometric shapes showcase the craftsmanship of the ancient artisans.
The Church of the Nativity consists of 50 Corinthian columns that are made of red limestone that were quarried locally. These were likely remnants from the original structure. Later, around the 12th century, they were adorned with crusader paintings of saints and prophets.
Steps to the right of the iconostasis, a carved screen in front of the main altar, lead down to the Grotto of the Nativity. This grotto is now predominantly a Greek Orthodox place of worship, with the Armenian Orthodox owning the northern transept, and Catholics holding the site of the manger and the adjoining altar next to the Nativity Grotto. According to the Status Quo Agreement from 1852, these 3 denominations share the Church of the Nativity.
While Western Christians celebrate Christ's birthday on December 25th, according to the Gregorian calendar, the Church at his birthplace waits 13 more days for the Orthodox celebration on January 7th, which follows the Julian calendar.
The televised Christmas Eve service on December 24th originates from the adjoining Church of the St. Catherine of Alexandria, which is Catholic.
In the grotto, the place of Christ's birth is a dimly lit rock cave. There is a 14-point silver star on the marble floor of the Grotto of the Nativity, which bears a Latin inscription that says, "Here Jesus Christ was born to the Virgin Mary." The 14 points of the star are said to represent the 14 generations of Jesus Christ from Abraham to David, then from David to the Babylonian captivity, and from the Babylonian captivity to Jesus Christ.
In the same area at a slightly lower level is the Grotto of the Manger, where the rock shelf is covered with marble. A small altar in the Grotto of the Manger is dedicated to the adoration of the Magi, the 3 wise men described in Matthew's Gospel as coming from the east to worship the newborn Jesus.
Also associated with the Church of Nativity is St. Jerome, who lived nearby in a small cave called Jerome's Grotto. St. Jerome devoted 3 decades of his life to translating the Hebrew and Greek Bibles into Latin. This Bible version is known as the Vulgate and was used by Catholics until the 20th century. The cave is accessed from the Church of St. Catherine of Alexandria next to the Church of Nativity. Also, in the church's courtyard, St. Jerome is commemorated.
After visiting this site, we were dropped back in Jerusalem around 6 p.m.
Our final tour in Israel was the Hebron Dual Narrative Tour. Just like the day before, we began at the Abraham Hostel lobby at Davidka Square. A charter bus picked us up at 8 a.m. and we returned to Jerusalem around 7 p.m.
After a brief introduction to the city, the tour split into two parts. In the morning, we explored the Palestinian-controlled part of Hebron with a Palestinian guide, and in the afternoon, we switched to a Jewish guide to see the Israeli-controlled areas. The purpose of the tour is to offer a balanced perspective on life in Hebron from both sides.
Set in the Judean mountains about 30 kilometers south of Jerusalem, Hebron stands 930 meters above sea level, making it the highest city in Israel and Palestine. It is also the largest city in the West Bank and is renowned for its glassware and pottery.
Hebron is marked by intense security measures and numerous checkpoints, primarily due to the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Visiting Hebron offers a unique and sobering glimpse into the complexities of life in this area. While the security measures can be daunting, they underscore the city's significance and the deep-seated issues that continue to shape its present and future. For travelers, Hebron is a place where history, religion, and modern-day politics intersect, providing a profound and thought-provoking experience.
In the Palestinian area, our guide took us to the city center where we met various shop owners and residents. They shared their crafts and experiences living in Hebron. We watched a skilled glassblower expertly craft a vase. And visited a tahini and halva factory. There we had a tahini tasting, which is a condiment made from toasted, ground-up sesame seeds, and we had the opportunity to purchase halva, a confection made with tahini, sugar, spices, and occasionally some nuts, which we were able to take back as a sweet snack for later.
We had lunch with the local family and enjoyed a rooftop view of the city from their home. The Palestinian part of the tour concluded with the visit to the Muslim side of the Tomb of the Patriarchs.
The Tomb of the Patriarchs in Hebron is the burial place of three biblical couples, Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, and Jacob and Leah. It is the second holiest site in Judaism after the Western Wall in Jerusalem and is also sacred to Christianity and Islam.
According to the book of Genesis, Abraham bought the land containing the cave of Machpelah as a burial place for his wife Sarah around 2,000 years before Christ was born.
Today, the site is the dominant feature of central Hebron, surrounded by a fortress-like wall built by Herod the Great. Similar to the Western Wall, prayers are often slipped into the cracks of the stones. The history of the site reveals a series of transformations across centuries. Initially, a structure was possibly erected during the Hasmonean dynasty. Then, between 31 and 4 BCE, Herod the Great constructed a large rectangular enclosure around the cave to commemorate the site, though this structure lacked a roof. During the Byzantine period, a basilica was built within the enclosure, which was roofed except for the center portion. In the 7th century, the Persians took control and the building was subsequently renovated by Arab Muslims into a roofed mosque. The 12th century saw the Crusaders capture the site and convert the enclosure back into a church. However, around 1188, in the same century, Sultan Saladin reclaimed the area and transformed the enclosure once again into a mosque. Inside, 6 cenotaphs covered with decorated tapestries represent the tombs of the patriarchs. The actual burial places of Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Rebekah, Jacob, and Leah are in the cave beneath each monument, which is not accessible. The complex is divided into 3 main sections, a Jewish section, a Muslim section, and a central section viewable from both sides.
Before entering the Muslim section of the Cave of the Patriarchs, women need to cover their heads and arms as a sign of respect and modesty. The site provides coverings for visitors if needed. Similarly, men are expected to wear a head covering like a kippah in the Jewish section, and these are also available outside the prayer rooms.
In the center of the complex are rooms containing the cenotaph of Sarah, and further on, the cenotaph of Abraham. Each cenotaph has a richly embroidered cover, light green for Sarah and darker green for Abraham. This section is viewable from both the Muslim and the Jewish sides of the Cave of the Patriarchs.
On the Muslim side, a wide door between these two cenotaphs leads into the Great Mosque, containing the cenotaphs of Isaac and Rebekah. The vaulted ceiling, supported pillars and capitals, and upper stained glass windows date back to the Crusader Church. A marble and mosaic mihrab, or prayer niche, faces Mecca, and beside it is an exquisitely carved minbar, or pulpit, made of walnut wood without nails. Next to the pulpit, a stone canopy covers the sealed entrance to steps descending to the burial cave of Machpelah.
After visiting the Muslim side of the Tomb of the Patriarchs, we met up with our Jewish guide. Entry to the Jewish area is via an external square building on the southwestern wall. Inside this section are synagogues and the cenotaphs of Jacob and Leah, each in an octagonal room.
If you look up, you may see ostrich eggs hanging. There is one belief that these eggs have a scent undetectable by the human nose that repels insects and spiders because they find the smell unbearable. Another theory is that the egg has symbolism that could relate to religion. As one example, just as the shell provides protection, the church seeks to safeguard the souls of its congregation.
After the Cave of the Patriarchs, we visited a synagogue and a residential area to listen to their perspective on life in Hebron. Afterwards, the next location was Tel Rameda, which is the site of the ancient city of Hebron. Walking in the ruins, there are remains that go back to the Copper Age, with settlements thought to include Canaanite, Israelite, and Edomite settlements.
At the top of Tel Rameda is a tomb complex of two biblical figures, Jesse and Ruth. Jesse is the father of King David, and Ruth is the grandmother of Jesse and the great-grandmother of King David. She is the person after whom the book of Ruth is named. At the site, a monument was built with the synagogue. You can see from the construction that materials have been reused from other nearby ruins.
Before heading back to Jerusalem, we made one last stop to a residential building to get a nighttime panoramic view of the city.
This dual narrative tour of Hebron provided a deep and multifaceted understanding of the city's rich history and the complex reality of its present.
This last tour concludes the sites that we visited in Israel. The next day, we will make a border crossing into Jordan. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and stay tuned for our next episode exploring the beautiful country of Jordan.
And remember, don't just watch adventures,
Create them!